Welcome to my channel. If you've enjoyed watching one or two of our videos and haven't subscribed yet, click that subscribe button now for more captivating stories like this. Don't miss a single story.
In this world, both a hero and a demon king coexist. The hero is dedicated to fighting for the empire, while the demon king rules over the demonic realm. When they finally confront each other, it appears that this time, the hero is taking a more aggressive stance, according to the demon king. The hero derives power from the world solely to eliminate the demon king, while the demon king's purpose is to vanquish the hero. Meanwhile, those who unquestionably serve the demon king are known as corps commanders. During the battle between the demon king and the hero, one of the 12 corps commanders attacks the hero's companions. These 12 official corps, numbered from 1 to 12, are the ruthless and powerful subordinates of the demon king. It is believed that no one can match their strength, but even they struggle against the hero. However, there exists someone who has defeated a hero before. The Zero Corps commander, who is our protagonist, Demon Arut Deon Hart. His identity as the Demon King's secret weapon is widely known, and he is the talent most treasured by the Demon King. The scene shifts to the present as Demon Arut tenders his resignation as the Zero Corps commander. The Demon King, shocked and agitated, breaks his pen and scatters papers on his desk. He questions why Arut suddenly decided to abandon him, but then unexpectedly embraces him, expressing his unwillingness to let him go. The Demon King asks if Arut truly meant his resignation and inquire about the sudden decision. Dion avoids eye contact, making it difficult for the Demon King to discern his thoughts. The Demon King asks if Arut dislikes the Demon King's castle or if he feels discriminated against because he is human. The Demon King, surprised by these thoughts, reflects on Dion's undeniable strength, despite his humanity, considering him the most potent asset he has. He wonders who would dare challenge him. Dion responds that his subordinates did nothing wrong. In response, the Demon King asks for the reason behind Arut's resignation. He realizes that Arut's thoughts are inscrutable from his expression. Dion asks if the king would kill him if he didn't provide a reason. The king is taken aback and assures Arut that he has no intention of killing him, emphasizing how much he treasures him. The king speculates if Arut's decision is related to not being sent to the borders lately or a desire for combat. Arut dismisses these notions and apologizes for his sudden nosebleed. Concerned, the Demon King urgently summons the Zero Corps commander's doctor. The doctor arrives with Arut's servant and examines his condition. The Demon King inquires about Arut's health, to which the doctor explains that it is an after effect of the injury sustained in the battle against the hero. The Demon King becomes angry, frustrated by the doctor's statement he doesn't want to hear what he is already know, and commands her to find a swift cure. He implies severe consequences if she fails. The doctor agrees to do her best. The Demon King decides to continue their conversation later, urging Arut to focus on recovery. He instructs his servants to take Arut to his room. Though Arut insists he can go by himself, the doctor insists on accompanying him. As Arut was being transported to his room, he couldn't help but overhear some demons engaged in gossip about him. They wondered if the Zero Corps commander had coughed up blood again, speculating that he had thrown his body in front of the hero when the hero chose to self-destruct. The demons expressed amazement that he had suffered only minor injuries, and one of them mentioned hearing that Arut was still considered the second strongest individual in the demon realm, right after the Demon King himself, despite his current weakened state. The gossiping demons showed deep respect for Arut, even though he was human. They considered him to be the closest in strength to the Demon King and held him in high regard. However, Arut's mind was preoccupied with thoughts of a simpler life. He just wanted to resign from his position and live a normal existence, but the rumors and speculations around him persisted, and he couldn't escape their chatter. Everyone was hurrying up to the room and they arrived at Zero Corps commander room. The servants and the doctor vowed and says, "Please have a good rest." After being moved to his bed, Arut's mind raced with questions. Did he really kill the hero? Was he truly strong? He couldn't believe it, he was just Deon Hart, not Demon Arut. He considered himself the weakest human in the Demon King's castle. The notion of his strength seemed preposterous. The scene shifted as a maid approached, taking the cup from Arut after he had finished drinking. As he placed the glass on the tray, it nearly slipped, and the maid apologized. Arut commanded her to leave. As she departed, the maid thought that their hands had touched, and she assumed he was happy about it. However, Arut's thoughts were quite the opposite. He believed that she harbored a deep dislike for him, and he found it painful that she didn't even want to touch his hands. In contrast, he considered the Demon King's excessive concern stifling. A flashback scene showed the Demon King discovering Arut outside and questioning why he was out when he hadn't fully recovered. The king mentioned that he had instructed his subordinates to look after Arut. He emphasized the importance of eating to recover and even provided him with food, including a big roasted chicken. Returning to reality, Arut contemplated his predicament. He was just a human in a demonic realm, born with a naturally weak body that would crumble under the slightest stress. He had been mistakenly perceived as a strong individual, leading to his appointment as the Zero Corps commander. For now, he could maintain the facade that his condition was due to the battle with the hero. However, the thought of someone discovering his innate weakness filled him with dread, as he believed it would lead to his demise. He couldn't bear the idea of the Demon King and the 12 commanders ridiculing him as a feeble plaything. Arut resolved that he must escape from this place at any cost and seek a peaceful, worry-free life. His only path to achieve that was to leave the demonic realm behind. With determination, he declared, "I need to get out of this place at all costs and as peacefully as possible. I'm going to live a long and worry-free life. The only way to achieve that is to get out of the demonic realm." Dion's thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of Ed, the aide to the Zero Corps commander. Dion was surprised to see him and asked if he had just returned from the human world. Ed confirmed that he had and showed Dion a new cube called the Mirror Cube. Ed was one of the few demons that Dion felt comfortable around. Ed would often venture into the human world and bring back trinkets for Dion to play with, helping to alleviate his boredom. Ed mentioned that the Mirror Cube might help with Dion's boredom, but then he hesitated and asked if Dion had collapsed. Dion admitted that he had, but reassured Ed that he was fine now. Ed pondered how to improve Dion's condition and expressed anger toward the hero for causing it. Dion thought to himself that he might need to be reborn, but he didn't share this thought. Instead, he mentioned that he had brought this upon himself. Ed disagreed, saying, "That's not true. Didn't you stop the hero for the sake of saving us all?" Dion thought otherwise, but didn't voice his thoughts. Ed was determined to find a cure. Before leaving, Ed advised Dion to get ample rest. After Ed left, Dion reflected, "Well, there aren't many demons that'd care about me as much as he does. I am thankful to him." However, he felt that Ed's concern might be a bit excessive. He also hoped that their interactions wouldn't lead to any misunderstandings. In the Demon King's castle, the scene shifted to the Demon King as he examined Dion's resignation. The Demon King couldn't discern Dion's thoughts from his expressionless face, but smiled, thinking that Dion had always been unpredictable from the moment they met. A flashback was shown of the hero lying unconscious, leaning on Dion's body. The demons around them believed that Dion had killed the hero and prevented his self-destruction. They marveled at the impressive individual the Empire had sent. The Demon King asked Dion for his name, and Dion introduced himself as Deon Hart. The king offered Dion a place in the Demon King's army. Back in the present, the Demon King reflected on how things had changed since Dion joined them. He couldn't send Dion on missions due to his condition, but suddenly had an idea while looking at some papers. He promptly ordered a meeting of the Corps commanders and was excited about the possibility that his plan might satisfy Dion. A demon guard respectfully saluted as he laid eyes on his lord, Arut. Dion emerged from his quarters, visibly annoyed and deeply upset. He couldn't help but lament that the chance for a pleasant rest had been snatched away by the Demon King's summons. What puzzled him was that the king himself had advised him to rest initially. Dion couldn't fathom why the king had abruptly convened a meeting for the Corps commanders. As he walked, fear crept over him. He contemplated whether this meant that all the Corps commanders within the Demon King's castle had been called as well. Dion found it hard to believe that he was about to meet the other commanders, considering he was already petrified of ordinary demons. He couldn't shake the feeling that the king might be leading him to his demise. Two guards, observing his demeanor, discussed Dion's mood. One of them remarked, "Is he feeling any better now?" The other guard responded, "He appears quite angry about the sudden summons." Dion, immersed in his thoughts, realized he needed to maintain a composed facade. He understood that provoking them would be a losing battle. He sighed and managed to calm himself. Meanwhile, two demon guards engaged in their own conversation. One guard asked her companion for the name of the newcomer and questioned if he was the rumored human. It was her first time encountering Dion. Unable to recall Dion's name, her fellow guards began recounting a story. He recounted the time when Dion had slain a hero, and when questioned by the Demon King about his identity, Dion had casually responded, "I'm Demon Arut." The guard was astounded and exclaimed to her fellow guard, "Now you won't forget his name." She replied, "Well, that's the most demon-like name I've ever heard." Overhearing their conversation, Dion corrected them by stating that he had introduced himself as Deon Hart, not Demon Arut. The two guards, sensing Dion's sour mood, grew cautious but continued their chit-chat. One mentioned hearing that Dion was stressed because he couldn't engage in combat at the moment. The other suggested they leave immediately before Dion considered them obstacles. Dion felt devastated, realizing he stood no chance against them. He believed he was utterly weak. He wondered why the misunderstanding seemed to deepen over time, but he found solace in the fact that nobody dared to provoke him as a result. He understood that if he were caught in this situation, he would face immediate death. He couldn't let anyone discover his vulnerability before he escaped the demonic realm. He resolved to act with confidence, projecting an image of fearlessness as the commander of the Zero Corps, Demon Arut. On his way to the meeting, Dion encountered two guards who were taken aback by his newfound arrogance and confidence. Dion, maintaining his facade, commanded them to open the door. Upon his arrival at the meeting, the Demon King announced, "Last but not least, we have the Zero Corps commander joining us." The king's delight at seeing him was evident as he remarked, "You're here." Dion maintained a serious demeanor and was taken aback by the palpable tension in the room. The first corps commander, Jakar, suggested that Dion should sit next to the king. Meanwhile, the third corps commander, Asil, observed him and couldn't shake the feeling that Dion appeared weak, despite his reputation. Asil secretly longed for a chance to test Dion's strength in battle. The sixth corps commander, Velaton, voiced his disapproval, questioning if accomplishing an objective was any excuse for being late. The fourth corps commander, Idelia, light-heartedly slapped Velaton on the back, commenting, "I'm sure he has his reasons." Velaton responded with annoyance, wondering what was going on. The 11th corps commander, Ririnal, expressed outrage at what she perceived as disrespect towards Lord Arut, deeming it impudent. Dion, Zero Corps commander Demon Arut, found himself seated next to the king, overwhelmed by the sheer number of corps commanders present. He couldn't help but feel anxious and stressed, yearning to retreat to his room. The Demon King inquired about Dion's well-being, to which Dion replied with an apology for his tardiness. The king reassured him, stating that it was understandable and that Dion wasn't late on purpose. However, Dion couldn't help but think that he had indeed been late on purpose, driven by his reluctance to attend the meeting. A demon servant approached Dion, offering to pour him a drink. Dion's expression remained serious, but internally, he felt a surge of happiness. He thought, "It's here." He took a sip of the drink, thinking about how one could indulge in expensive alcohol during meetings in the demonic realm. This was the primary reason he had reluctantly attended the meeting. Suddenly, he realized that the drink wasn't alcohol but grape juice. Dion's disappointment was palpable, and they couldn't help but feel the weight of it. However, before tensions could escalate further, the Demon King intervened with a stern command, "Stop it, Arut. I ordered them to do this." "Dion, you and your love for alcohol." Dion questioned, "Why am I the only one?" and the king responded, "Do you really not know?" Dion couldn't help but wonder if this was a case of discrimination against humans. Then, suddenly, a realization struck Dion, "Wait a minute. Is he trying to save on alcohol because he discovered how useless I am? Did he finally find out about me? In that case, have they gathered here to announce my end?" Dion's thoughts were interrupted as the king urged everyone to hear him out, as Dion was the reason for calling the meeting. Dion couldn't help but wonder if their execution was the actual plan. The king then instructed the 6th Corps commander to share the details of the document submitted to him. The 6th commander explained that although the 12th Corps had been protecting the village, there was a sudden, sharp increase in the number of demonic monsters. The 12th Corps could no longer handle the situation. After these monsters destroyed half of a small village, the remaining residents were evacuated to a fortified city. However, there was uncertainty about when that city might be ambushed, so reinforcements were needed to hunt down the demonic monsters. As the 6th commander finished their report, the other commanders began discussing the absence of the 12th Corps commander. They couldn't help but wonder if they had been killed by mere demonic monsters. Someone cautioned, "Watch what you say, even mere demonic monsters can become formidable if they band together." One commander added, "But they're just failed products, aren't they?" Dion couldn't help but think, they're making such a huge ruckus. He understood their surprise, though. Among the demons that the Demon King had created, these demonic monsters were senseless beings, loyal only to their instincts and desires. They were considered failed products. Dion found it hard to believe that the 12th Corps commander had lost to these demonic monsters. Nevertheless, he couldn't help but wonder, but what does this have to do with me? The 6th Corps commander continued to report, explaining, "We're at war every day because there are too many demonic monsters. We don't know the reason for their sharp and abrupt increase in numbers." The Demon King replied, revealing, the now deceased hero used to kill those monsters. It's no surprise that he got killed when they gathered and charged at the village. Suddenly, the focus of the room shifted to Arut, the hero lord who had allegedly slain the hero. Arut's face contorted with despair as he thought, is this it? Are they intending to kill me using this as an excuse? But, in the first place, I never killed the hero. His gaze locked onto the Demon King, his eyes burning with anger and frustration. Arut couldn't help but think, more importantly, isn't the Demon King the one who tried to kill the hero in the first place? If anyone's responsible, it should be you. Demon King, say something. The king, a cunning and astute ruler, noticed Arut's accusing gaze. He couldn't help but think, those eyes, I knew it. He suspected that Arut might be itching for a confrontation. With a sly smile, the Demon King responded to the 6th commander's concerns, don't worry. The 0 Corps shall be dispatched as reinforcements. Arut's mouth fell open in disbelief, he was genuinely surprised by the king's decision. Arut thought in bewilderment, what? What the hell is he talking about? The Demon King continued to smile, feeling satisfied with his decision. He addressed Arut directly, saying, go there and relieve some stress. I know you wanted to go there. In his mind, the king thought, I did well, didn't I? The 6th commander, a keen observer of the situation, couldn't help but note how casually the Demon King seemed to be treating the assignment. The Demon King is speaking as if he's just sending him on a neighborhood patrol, he mused. It was evident that the Demon King placed immense trust in the 0 Corps commander, believing that he could achieve what the 12th Corps commander could not. This raised a burning question in the 6th commander's mind, just how strong is he for the Demon King to trust him so much? Arut, on the other hand, reluctantly responded to the Demon King's decision. My body isn't in perfect condition though, he said aloud. However, internally, he pleaded, please don't make me go. Tell me not to go. 3rd Corps commander picked up on Arut's hesitation and began to speculate, does he not want to go? The 1st Corps commander chimed in, expressing doubts. I thought he'd make excuses and say that he doesn't want to go after hearing the report, but he's probably suppressing his desire to go on a rampage while calmly assessing his body's condition. 3rd Corps commander found himself agreeing, exclaiming, oh, is that so? That's amazing. He was genuinely impressed by Arut's self-control and composure. The 1st Corps commander, though still wary of Arut, acknowledged, while I still don't trust him yet, that attitude of his is truly that of a great commander's. As 3rd Corps commander looked at Arut, he couldn't help but think, not only is he strong, but he is also able to make good judgments. My desire to fight him is increasing. The Demon King clarified his intentions, assuring Arut that he wasn't asking him to overexert his body. Instead, he was simply requesting that Arut take command of the 0 Corps and relieve some stress in the village. With a knowing smile, he asked, that should be easy for you, right? Arut hesitated for a moment, his internal struggle evident. I don't care if the Demon King permits it. I'll definitely escape from this damn demonic realm, he thought fiercely. But after clenching his hands and weighing his options, he finally gave in. In that case, I'll go, he said aloud, resigning himself to the task ahead. The chariot of demons moved silently through the dark forest, shrouded in an eerie silence. Inside the carriage, Dion remained lost in his thoughts, overwhelmed by grief and a sense of inevitability. This day finally had to come, he mused bitterly. Since I tried to run away, the D-Day has only gotten closer. A flashback revealed a moment when the Demon King had caught him packing, sensing his strong desire to escape. The king had apologized for keeping him waiting, to which Dion had reluctantly responded, "No, this is. Yes, I'm dying to go." However, his luggage wasn't meant for a journey to freedom, it was for fleeing to the Empire. He couldn't openly discuss his intentions with the Demon King, especially considering the lunatic emperor who had sent him to the Demon King and his hostile brother. Despite the challenges, Dion saw fleeing to the Empire as a better alternative to meeting an untimely death among monsters. He had decided not to entertain optimistic thoughts. Dion pulled back the carriage curtain to catch a glimpse of the outside world and spotted his aide, Ed. He had heard that the Zero Corps, as well as Ed, were highly competent. He felt confident that he could simply play his part and step away, letting them handle the rest. Another demon within the carriage engaged Ed in conversation, mentioning their imminent arrival at the village. Ed, in command, urged everyone to stay in ranks and maintain their vigilance. Dion, however, believed there was no reason for him to intervene. Even the Demon King had advised him not to overexert himself. Now that he was done with worrying, he simply wanted to enjoy his solitude within the carriage. He retrieved a bottle of wine labeled Demonic Realm Specialty Wine, a rare and exquisite beverage crafted only in the Demon Realm. Despite being unable to partake in it during the meeting due to the Demon King's presence, Dion wasn't about to give up so easily. When the meeting had adjourned, he had discreetly stolen the bottle. As he opened the bottle and took a sip, Dion couldn't help but think, they say the aura of the spirit who died drinking this is out of this world, so I should at least try this before I die, right? The wine was delicious, and he let out a satisfied sigh. In that moment, savoring the exquisite taste of the Demon Realm's wine, he felt a rare sense of contentment and vitality amidst the looming uncertainty of his future. Ed couldn't help but wonder why Dion had grown so quiet inside the carriage, drawing the curtains as if to isolate himself further from the world. He suspected that Dion might still be reeling from the incident that had occurred before their departure. In a flashback scene, a servant had approached Dion and mentioned that he knew Dion preferred riding horseback. However, he pleaded with Dion to ride inside the carriage until he had fully recovered, citing it as an order from the Demon King. Dion's internal response was clear, what is he talking about? Of course, I should ride in the carriage. Who said I wanted to ride that ferocious beast? Outwardly, Dion simply replied, well, all right. Ed, who had served Dion for a long time, could sense that Dion truly wanted to ride the horse. In the present moment, Ed wished he could encourage Dion to do as he pleased. However, the Demon King's order was for Dion's well-being, and Ed could almost imagine the Demon King's voice chastising him, are you insane? You thought it would be okay to have him ride horseback even after judging the state of his health? Ed's attention was diverted when another demon called him, informing him that they were approaching the village. As they arrived, a scene of chaos unfolded before them. Houses were ablaze, and corpses littered the area. It was a nightmarish sight, suggesting that the demonic monsters had already wreaked havoc and moved on. Ed wasted no time. He commanded the group to chase after the demonic monsters, suspecting they hadn't gone too far. But suddenly, without warning, a group of these creatures appeared, forcing the Zero Corps to take defensive positions. The demons swiftly brandished their swords, and goblins charged at them, turning the scene even more chaotic. As Ed surveyed the turmoil, he realized that there seemed to be no end to these relentless foes. And then, a larger and more menacing monster appeared right in front of him, catching Ed off guard and leaving him in shock. The battle had taken an unexpected turn, and the Zero Corps were facing an even greater threat than they had anticipated. The scene shifted to the First Corps commander, who voiced concerns to the Demon King about whether the Zero Core would be sufficient for the subjugation of the demonic monsters. He believed that due to the high number of monsters, reinforcements should be sent. The Demon King, however, appeared confident and assured the commander that the Zero Core was strong enough. He emphasized that even if they faced real danger, they had someone who could handle it. Dion. Back in the village, Dion emerged from the carriage, wielding 2 daggers. He swiftly dispatched the monster that had been attacking Ed. Ed called out to Dion, expressing gratitude and explaining that he had been about to request help from him. But suddenly, Dion pointed a knife at Ed, his eyes betraying a hint of drunkenness. He questioned, "Are you my opponent as well?" Ed was taken aback and narrowly evaded the knife, clarifying that he was not an enemy. Ed began to ponder how Dion had obtained alcohol in the midst of this chaos. However, his attention was quickly diverted to his right, where a massive monster loomed. Dion inquired if this creature was his opponent. Without waiting for a response, the monster struck him, sending him flying into a pile of rocks. Ed was concerned for Dion, who now had blood on his back and was seated in front of the rocks. Dion confirmed that the monster was indeed the enemy and charged toward it with lightning speed. He attacked the creature like an assassin possessed by madness, stabbing and slashing with deadly precision. His face bore an insatiable thirst for battle, and he seemed to be consumed by a relentless fighting spirit. The transformation in Dion was nothing short of astonishing, and Ed could only watch in awe as his commander unleashed a fury that was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. The soldiers of the Zero Core watched in awe and disbelief as they witnessed the true capabilities of their commander, Demon Arut. Dion, in his transformed state, had become an unstoppable force. He swiftly dispatched the monstrous adversary, and as he stood triumphantly atop the fallen creature, he taunted, "Now it's your turn." Dion's demeanor had shifted dramatically. His facial expressions now resembled that of a joker, a twisted and manic grin etched onto his face. He continued to paint the battlefield with the blood of their enemies, delivering terror to the very core of their foes. His laughter rang out amidst the chaos, a chilling and unsettling sound that seemed to emanate from a place of madness. In the midst of this savage display, Dion couldn't help but reflect on the irony of his situation. He pondered how, with his supposedly weak body, he had managed not only to survive, but to thrive in this unforgiving world. It was a paradox that struck him as he reveled in the carnage, leaving his comrades both astonished and fearful of the power that had been unleashed within their commander. As Dion was on rampage, the scene shifts to the Empire. In the Empire, Emperor Eduardo Desert engaged in conversation with a hero who had returned from a mission to survey the demon realm. The hero reported to the king that during the latest subjugation effort, the commander of the Zero Core had taken part. The hero described this commander as extremely strong and brutal, confirming the rumors that had circulated. He added that the commander of the Zero Core was rumored to be the most prized talent of the Demon King. The king listened intently, and a hint of nostalgia tinged his words as he expressed missing someone. He mused that if the demons wanted to field their most talented individuals, the Empire should make its own preparations. The king then revealed that he had a perfect candidate in mind for such a role and offered the hero a special opportunity to achieve greatness. With the royal order extended to him, the hero accepted the challenge, setting the stage for a potential clash between the Empire and the demon realm, with the most skilled individuals on both sides poised to take center stage in the unfolding conflict. Dion found himself caught in the grips of a haunting dream, a flashback to the 8-year battle fought in the name of the Empire. The vivid recollection depicted a place soaked in blood, with the vanguard on the front lines sacrificing themselves. But Dion couldn't help but feel that these soldiers were nothing more than meat shields, forsaken by the very empire they fought for. It was a relentless nightmare, a vision of sheer hell. As Dion's dream portrayed the Empire's soldiers locked in a fierce battle against the demonic forces, his thoughts during the dream revealed his inner turmoil. He scoffed at the idea of fighting for the Empire, seeing it as a cruel joke. He had no desire to be a pawn in their game, no intention of sacrificing himself for an empire that had condemned him to this living nightmare. In his heart, he had only one purpose: to do everything in his power to survive and defy the Empire's wishes. Revenge was his ultimate goal, a means of taking back control over his destiny. Suddenly, Dion was jolted awake. He found himself seated in his own room, bathed in the soft, reassuring glow of reality. The dream had been harrowing, a haunting reminder of his past, but now he was safely in the present, determined to forge his own path and reclaim his agency in this tumultuous world. Dion slowly returned to consciousness, greeted by Ed's voice asking if he was awake. Ben was also present, and he mentioned that Dion had been asleep for the entire day. Dion learned that they had managed to complete his treatment while he was asleep but had been worried when he had returned covered in blood. Confused and disoriented, Dion asked about the mission and when he had arrived here. He had no recollection of what had transpired. Ed informed him that the demonic monster subjugation had been successful, with the monsters fleeing in fear. They had returned to the Demon King's castle to treat him after he had collapsed. Dion was surprised by the news and expressed his apologies for not being stronger. However, Ben sensed something was amiss. Dion seemed to be suffering from temporary amnesia due to his severe injury. Ben explained that Dion had been struck down by a demonic beast but had quickly gotten back up, so they hadn't thought much of it. Dion struggled to make sense of the situation. He began to remember fragments of the fight and realized he must have gotten drunk and caused trouble. However, he thought his condition was due to excessive drinking rather than an injury. Ben was amazed by the report that the Zero Corps had completed their mission without a single casualty, especially given the number of monsters they had faced. Dion insisted that he hadn't done anything, but Ben was quick to praise him for his humility. Inwardly, Dion couldn't fathom how he could have defeated so many monsters. He apologized to Ed, feeling like he had been a burden. Ed, blushing with admiration, assured Dion that he had been amazing and had defeated countless monsters at the front lines, setting a remarkable example as a commander. Ben, however, voiced his concern that Dion had overexerted himself, given the condition of his weak body. They advised him to be careful in the future. Ed, fired up with determination, reassured Dion that they existed for his sake and that they would become stronger so that Dion could trust and rely on them without worry. As Dion tried to make sense of the situation and wished for a moment of solitude, Dion found himself in a rather awkward situation as the fourth commander Adelia and the third commander Asild entered the room, apparently having heard that he was awake. Asild spoke in a voice that Dion thought was too loud, prompting Adelia to remark that he was even louder. She playfully asked Asild if he had followed her because he wanted to play, but Asild quickly clarified that he had come to pay his respects to the Zero Corps commander. Dion couldn't help but wonder why they were there in the first place and if they were close enough to him to pay him a visit. The first Corps commander Jakar intervened, scolding both Adelia and Asild for not realizing that Dion was uncomfortable with their presence, and urging them to greet him quietly and leave. Frustrated and wanting to be rid of them, Dion threw a tantrum, demanding that they all get lost. He thought to himself about how he could possibly get rid of these unwanted guests. Asild realized that he had been too careless in approaching Dion, given that he had just returned from a mission, and he apologized. Jakar urged everyone not to fight in the Demon King's castle, warning them not to kill each other. Dion was taken aback by the mention of killing and thought it was a ludicrous thing to say, considering his own weakness. However, he suddenly had an idea. He realized that if he could teach them about mercy, they might spare his life even after discovering his true weakness. Asild offered a sincere apology, and Dion acknowledged his anger but emphasized that there was no reason for violence just because he was angry. He explained the concept of mercy, urging them to show it even to those who lied or were weaker. Dion hoped this lesson would help him in the future. However, his speech was interrupted by the atmosphere in the room, which became tense as if he had scolded them. They appeared scared, and Dion was perplexed, thinking he had delivered the message nicely. Jakar changed the topic, congratulating Dion on the successful completion of his mission and remarking that he must have worked really hard. Adelia chimed in, sweetly sharing that there was much talk about him all over the castle, with rumors suggesting that he had single-handedly wiped out half the monsters. Dion was shocked by the exaggerated rumor and worried that he would end up claiming achievements he hadn't earned. Ed was proud and happy, while Asild mentioned that he had heard tales of Dion's heroism and came to ask a favor. Dion couldn't help but wonder what favor Asild might request. Asild explained that it wasn't a big deal, he simply wanted to spar with Dion once he fully recovered. Dion's expression turned from shock to fear at the prospect of sparring with a powerful demon like Asild, especially as the Third Corps commander who oversaw elite guards protecting the Demon King. He realized he was in for a challenging situation. Dion had asked Asild if he meant sparring with him, still trying to process the unexpected request. Asild confirmed that he had been hearing a lot about Dion's greatness and wanted to learn from him, which surprised Dion even more. Jakar, the first corps commander, chimed in, finding the idea of a spar with Dion intriguing. Jakar pondered, come to think of it, the Zero Corps commander has never engaged in a spar since taking on the role. I also had a curiosity about his skill level. I wonder if he'll agree to this proposal. Idalia chimed in excitedly, oh my! To witness Sir Arut in a sparring match. You do realize that the 4th Corps deals with information, right? I'll make sure to gather as many spectators as possible. Asild says, he doesn't care if they come, just make sure they don't interfere. Dion, however, couldn't help but think, he can't even say no. Why are they making decisions on their own? How does this even make sense? Inwardly, he feared, I'm going to be obliterated into a million pieces with a single strike of his hand. When Dion replied, he stammered, I think it will be quite difficult to accept a spar. I'm still feeling the aftermath of the battle with the monsters, and I think my strength. I mean, I could die. No, I mean, I might actually die. Dion couldn't help but berate himself, thinking, what am I even saying right now? Asild had her suspicions, thinking, is he trying to avoid the fight? But why? Dion's inner thoughts continued, wow, look at those suspicious eyes. I guess I can't just get by with futile excuses. Amazing. Jakar finally spoke, acknowledging Dion's reluctance, even against a commander, you have such confidence. He was, of course, referring to Dion. Jakar had always wondered why the Zero Corps commander refrained from sparring, but now he understood. The Zero Corps commander was actually concerned about his opponent, he noted. Dion and Asild were both taken aback by Jakar's insights, and Asild gave Dion an uncertain look, considering the implications of his confidence. Exactly, Jakar continued, it's for your sake that he rejected your sparring proposal. Moreover, it hasn't been long since his last battle, so I'm sure it'll be harder to control his temper during the spar. Asild thought that Dion's confidence might indicate that the spar wouldn't end until one of them was dead. He realized that Dion had an immense belief in his own victory, a level of confidence that he had never seen before. This was the sheer talent that the Demon King had acknowledged. Asild then spoke to Dion, acknowledging that he couldn't guarantee his victory and couldn't say for certain that he wouldn't die in the process. He admitted that he didn't have the heart to fight Dion to the death, expressing gratitude for Dion's consideration. Dion found himself in a situation where his initial reluctance had led to a deep discussion about the potential consequences of a spar. As everyone contemplated the implications, the atmosphere in the room remained tense and uncertain. Dion found himself bewildered by the turn of events, unsure of why these hostile commanders were treating him with such respect. Meanwhile, Ed, one of his aides, was impressed by how Dion had managed to garner respect from the commanders. Dion couldn't comprehend the situation fully, but he secretly hoped that he could somehow avoid the spar. Asild, however, hadn't given up entirely. He expressed his determination to request a spar again once he felt confident enough not to die in the process. Dion was shocked by Asild's persistence, thinking to himself that Asild should just give up already. Asild's enthusiasm was palpable as he left, stating that he felt invigorated by making a promise with Dion and was off to train. Asild's departure left everyone in the room, and Dion was still struggling to make sense of it all. Jakar commented that Asild had no ambition to do anything previously, but Dion's influence had sparked a newfound determination in him, which Jakar considered a positive development. Idalia, on the other hand, found Asild quite loud in his newfound enthusiasm. Dion, feeling overwhelmed by the situation, remained bent over, trying to process everything. Suddenly, Dion touched his forehead, seems like his head is aching, and his fever was rising again. Ed apologized to the two commanders for his condition and asked the two commanders to let him rest. The two commanders offered their concern and hoped for Dion's swift recovery. Ben, his aide, provided him with a glass of water as Dion contemplated his desire to escape from the demon realm. Before Jakar left, he expressed his eagerness to spar with Dion if he recovered and felt up to the challenge after sparring with the third commander. Dion was barely holding on, and after Jakar's sentences, he couldn't take it anymore and he almost collapsed. The scene shifted to Dion wandering somewhere in the Demon King's castle. Dion was overwhelmed by the constant demands and attention he was receiving from various demons in the Demon King's castle. The idea of seeing the members of the Zero Corps getting moderate exercise and fulfilling promises with the commanders had pushed him to his limits. In a moment of frustration, he kicked a rock in his path while muttering, "Please just leave me alone." Unfortunately, the rock hit a demon's head, leading to an unexpected encounter. The three demons was angry and approached him. But when they realize it's the commander, they greeted him as Demon Arut, the Zero Corps commander, and apologized for causing a disturbance. Dion was confused, not realizing that the demons were referring to the incident with the rock. The demons explained that they were teaching the incubus a lesson and promised not to disturb him again. They said their farewell to the commander, thinking Dion was not in a good mood. Dion considered it fortunate that the demons had left on their own, leaving him to contemplate what he should do with the young one. He was bothered by the fact that he had looked at a demon weaker than himself for the first time. The incubus was terrified as Dion was looking at her, and she knows that he is normally quiet and is known to be brutal when he's angry. The incubus was sure that her presence disturbs Dion. She shed tears thinking that she was going to die. However, to her surprise, Dion reached out his hand to help her stand and reassured her that the demons were gone. The incubus couldn't believe that Dion was treating her with genuine kindness. She mentioned being an incubus and asked if Dion found it disgusting to be physically in contact with her. Dion countered this by asking if he, being human, was disgusting. He assured her that he didn't find her disgusting either, emphasizing their shared struggle to survive in the tough demon realm. The incubus was touched by Dion's kindness and expressed her joy at being treated this way. However, she couldn't help but bring up a bothersome matter, mentioning that she'd love to repay him and asking if he had some time to spare. Dion found himself unable to respond, feeling that he had gotten involved in something quite troublesome. Meanwhile, the scene shifted to the Demon King, who had come to visit Dion in his room but found it empty. Hien, the castle gardener. She had insisted on repaying his kindness by giving him a tour of the garden within the Demon King's castle. Dion, not having much else to do at the moment, reluctantly agreed. As they walked through the castle, Dion couldn't help but wonder about the existence of a garden in such a dark and foreboding place. The very idea seemed contradictory to the demon realm's reputation. Hien, on the other hand, seemed genuinely excited to show him around. Upon reaching the garden, Dion was pleasantly surprised. The entrance was adorned with beautiful flowers, and the air was filled with the refreshing scent of greenery. It was a stark contrast to the rest of the castle, and he couldn't help but smile. However, Dion's brief moment of tranquility was interrupted when one of the demon plants in the garden lunged at him, attempting to bite. With quick reflexes, he dodged the plant's attack, much to Hien's chagrin. Hien scolded the plant, making her demeanor suddenly shift from cheerful to stern. She reassured Dion and apologized for the plant's behavior. Dion couldn't help but feel that there was something peculiar about Hien, beyond her role as a gardener. As Dion ventured further into the garden, he realized that the serene entrance was deceptive. The garden was teeming with demon plants, some of which seemed rather aggressive. Feeling increasingly uncomfortable, he decided he needed to leave. Dion quickly made up an excuse about needing to visit the training grounds to see the Zero Corps, emphasizing his urgency. Hien appeared disappointed but understood. She even mentioned she had wanted to show him even more intriguing plants deeper within the garden. Dion hurriedly left the garden, relieved to be away from the peculiar and dangerous demon plants. He thought to himself that the safety of his room was preferable to the hazards of the castle's garden. Meanwhile, Hien, left alone with her plants, conversed with them. She expressed her wish to see Dion again and decided to give him a special gift from the garden. She had noticed his fondness for plants and hoped this gesture would bring them closer. As Dion walked away from the garden, he reflected on his experiences. He couldn't escape the feeling that there was something unusual about the Demon King's castle, and he reluctantly admitted that it might not be such a bad idea to visit the Zero Corps members, especially after the incident during his drunken episode. The trauma he had recently faced made him more willing to face his responsibilities and see those who were working hard for him. When Dion arrived at the training grounds, he noticed that it was empty. Instead of leaving, he decided to find a spot to sit and wait. He believed that avoiding his duty to visit the Zero Corps wouldn't be productive, and he was curious about their strength. As he looked around, he spotted a wooden sword on the side, likely used by the soldiers during their training. During the recent monster subjugation mission, Dion had been out of his mind and couldn't recall anything. He thought this was a good opportunity to test his own physical capabilities. He picked up the wooden sword, but to his surprise, it was too heavy for him to lift. It made him realize that on the battlefield, he could barely handle a wooden sword, let alone an iron one, due to the cursed strength that afflicted him. As a result, he had always relied on using a dagger. His thoughts were interrupted when the Zero Corps soldiers arrived. They were surprised to see him holding the wooden sword, and Dion hoped they hadn't witnessed his struggle with it. However, they greeted him warmly and expressed their concern for his well-being. They praised his performance during their last mission. Dion interrupted their praise, reassuring them that he was fine and asking them to relax. However, the soldiers continued to murmur among themselves, noting that he still appeared tired and expressing their worry for him. They vowed to protect their commander no matter what. Dion couldn't understand why they were looking at him with such pity. He decided to get to the point and explained that he had planned to visit right after their mission, but was unable to due to various circumstances. He apologized to his soldiers for the delay and praised their excellent work during the mission. Dion intended to offer encouragement and watch them train afterward. Dion's turn around and says to the soldier that he just came by to say that, and he added he's pretty sure they would have done an outstanding job even if he didn't say anything as he began to walk away. One of the soldiers suddenly drew a sword and dashed toward him. Dion lost his balance and slipped, fearing that he would humiliate himself by falling. To avoid falling, he forced himself to kneel, just as the soldier swung his sword where Dion's head had been moments before. Both Dion and the soldier were surprised by this near-miss attack. The Zero Corps soldier expressed concern for Dion's well-being, asking if he was okay. Dion was bewildered by the sudden attack and thought about running away, deeming the situation dangerous. As he attempted to escape, he accidentally elbowed the attacker in the face, causing the man's nose to bleed. Dion was wondering what is happening. As the man fell down, he saw the face of his attacker. It was at this moment that Dion realized the attacker was a human. Dion couldn't comprehend how a human had managed to infiltrate the Demon King's castle. The soldiers called out to check if he was okay, and he realized that if these soldiers didn't recognize him, the intruder must indeed be an outsider. The intruder expressed his intention to flee, but Dion's demeanor suddenly changed. He lifted the wooden sword and struck the intruder with a menacing look in his eyes. Dion instructed the soldiers to report the incident to the Demon King and have the intruder locked up. Without further ado, Dion left the training grounds. The Zero Corps soldiers were left feeling disheartened, thinking that Sir Arut seemed disappointed in them. Some soldiers believed that they had allowed the intruder to infiltrate the training grounds, but it was Dion who had captured the culprit. One soldier recalled what was happened. All of his movements were so fluid and quick. Sir Arut, who seemed to be leisurely taking a stroll, dodged the ambush with unbelievable speed, and even struck back at him. Plus, he caught the intruder while was trying to run away, and wrapped up the situation in an instant. The stature of the Zero Corps commander is so high, that his presence overshadows the Zero Corps. I had trained even harder to be acknowledged. But the commander's skill level was beyond my expectations, and we haven't even reached the tip of his toes. One soldier felt inspired and fired up, declaring that there was no time to waste. They decided that they would train tirelessly from that day forward to become of greater assistance to Sir Arut. They were determined to push their limits and reach the level of their commander's prowess. The Zero Corps soldiers were ready to start their intensive training without rest, all with the goal of being a valuable asset to Sir Arut. The scene shifted back to Dion, where he realized that his wrist was hurting from overexertion while handling the wooden sword. Despite successfully handling the troublesome situation with the intruder, he decided it was time to rest. He lay down on his bed, gazing at the open curtains, and he sleeps. As he woke up, he says that he sleeps very well. He wondered why the Demon King was there and asked if he was dreaming. The king assured him it wasn't a dream, and Dion became alert, asking why the Demon King had come. The Demon King requested Dion's presence, and he remembered that this is about that prisoner, and they began to walk towards the underground dungeon. Dion questioned the choice of location, wondering why the king had brought him there. As they arrived at the dungeon, a soldier saluted them, and Dion grew increasingly puzzled. The king ordered the soldier to open the door, revealing the human intruder in shackles. The sight was chaotic, with blood and 2 other prisoners on the ground. The king drew Dion's attention to the captured intruder, asking if he seemed familiar. Dion was confused, and the prisoner taunted them. The king emphasized the intruder's incredible power to strike down a demon despite being a human, and revealed the prisoner's face to Dion, who suddenly realized it was a hero. Dion understood the dire choice a hero faced when confronting the Demon King: either self-destruct to harm the Demon King or disperse their power as a fragment of a hero. Dion knew that the Empire collected those with hero fragments, but officially recognized only those who achieved significant accomplishments as true heroes. The king lamented the situation and called the intruder a hero candidate or remnant of a hero. Dion agreed that sending a hero or hero candidate to the demon realm was unusual and wondered about the emperor's intentions. He then requested some private time with the prisoner, and the king agreed. As Dion faced the prisoner alone, they exchanged words. The prisoner accused Dion of being a traitor, while Dion questioned what sins the prisoner had committed to be abandoned by the emperor. Dion hinted that the emperor might have had other motives for sending the prisoner to the dangerous demon realm. The conversation left the prisoner bewildered and doubting the emperor's loyalty. Before leaving the prison, Dion warned the prisoner to think carefully about his circumstances. As he walked away, the prisoner vowed to kill the emperor for betraying him. Returning to the king, Dion expressed his disappointment with the superficial loyalty of the prisoner and suggested they kill him. The king agreed and asked for a favor in return, to which Dion consented. The Demon King says that he should give him a favor in return. Dion wondered what he wants. The king says that the First Corps has requested an immediate assistance. They said that it wasn't a hero candidate, but a real hero that is participating in the battle. He says that as Dions already know that demon and heroes don't get along well. Dion's thought in his mind: if the hero that appeared on the front lines isn't some fragment hero that's been used and cast aside by the emperor, like their prisoner, but a real hero, then the average demons wouldn't be a match at all. The king says, and one more thing, you're curious too, of the intention of the emperor who had sent a fragment along with the real hero, so he asked Dion to take good care of the mission as well. Dion was not answering, he was keeping quiet, and suddenly his seriousness has changed, seems like he just woke up. He asked himself, when did I get here? The king says that Dion needs to get ready to depart, so let's head up, he says. Dion was confused where he is, and he doesn't know where he is going. The scene shifts outside the Demon King's castle. Ed is waiting for Dion, and he ready the chariot for Dion. Dion standing upstairs thinking, I remember following the Demon King to the underground dungeon. But as I regain consciousness, in going off to some insanely scary place again. I keep blacking out, and every time I do, I feel like I'm going insane. Is this a disease? What I can somewhat recall is the intruder will die. The Demon King ordered me to go to front lines. And the appearance of the new hero. Ed approached him and says, Sir Arut, all preparation for departure are complete. He replies that he understood. He walked to go inside the carriage. While walking he was thinking, since I'm going to go, I might as well check out the face of this new hero to comfort myself. After all, it is true that I'm curious. As Ed observing Dion, he thought, I know he quenched his immediate thirst by going on the monster subjugation trip, but I'm sure it wasn't satisfying enough for Sir Arut. I hear things are quite dire on the front lines. But looking at Sir Arut's face, he looks happy, as if he's going on a vacation. But suddenly the 11 Corps Commander Ririnal was flying interrupted their thought as she called Sir Arut. She says that she really miss him. And she landed on the ground. Dion asked him what is he doing here. Dion thought, despite her cute appearance, she possesses the most demonic energy. Second only to Demon King. I'm not going to be fooled by the appearance anymore. Ririnal says, I heard you were going to the front lines, so I wanted to give you this. She presented a brilliant pink necklace. Dion wondered why she giving it to him. And he thought it's a suspicious-looking necklace. But why she giving it? Since it looks suspicious, he decided not to accept it. Ririnal explains, I cast a defensive spell on it so it will prevent you from dying at least once. It wasn't much, but I wanted to somehow be of help to you, Sir Arut. After Ririnal finishes her sentences, Sion immediately grabbed the necklace to her hand and thanking her. He tapped her head, and while looking at the necklace he was thinking, she's giving it to me, so I should obviously accept it. Why should there be a reason to reject a present? And suddenly he realizes that he let his guard down. Ririnal was so happy she was blushing. Dion stopped tapping her head, thinking, that lively moving thing, that ribbon. Know that tentacle is quite unpleasant, but Ririnal doesn't seem like she's unhappy, so that's a relief. But seems him scared in going to stop that. Ed vowed and thanked Ririnal. Ed says that he knows that Sir Arut is strong. He says, I was worried due to the aftermath, however I can now rest easy thanks to the necklace you give to him, Miss Ririnal. Ririnal replies, to think of Sir Arut to such extent, you are such a great lieutenant, continue to serve Sir Arut with that attitude. Ed replies, leave it to me. While Dion at the back was annoyed. Ed then assists Dion to the carriage. They leave and Ririnal waving at them as they leave. Inside the carriage, Dion was thinking, the aftermath, I obtain it after killing Hero, huh? To be clear on this matter, I did not restrain a hero who was going to self-explode, nor did I absorb the self-explosion. At that time I was merely a comrade of the hero. A flashback scene was shown. Dion thinks, this is all left, we lost so many people on the way here. The hero called him Sir Hart. Please remain here, he asked the hero if he was serious, and he immediately replied yes. The hero explains that he will finish the battle along with the Empire troops. He says to Deon Hart that this is more than enough. Since this Demon King is known to be the strongest in history, there's no way to guarantee your survival, the hero says to Dion. He added, we also need someone to report the result of this battle to the Empire. I would like you to fulfill that role, Sir Hart, so please go back. There's also something you need to do, right? The hero says, I know why such a previous hero such as yourself is coning along on this adventure. It's because you need a greater achievement to fulfill your wish, right? If you return with the result, it will be a great achievement. Anyways, if even the achievement you accomplished in a war weren't enough and you had to join this quest, just what did you request upon the Emperor? Did you by chance ask for an entire nation? When Dion was about to reply, the hero said his farewell, and he will hear his answer when he go back. Dion was left in the forest, while the hero and the troops was battling the Demon King and the Demon Army. While Dion was sitting waiting for the hero, he thought, I want to confirm, but I can't move my legs. I don't know if it's guilt, shame, or fear, or is it all three? The role of the comrade is to clear a path to reach the Demon King. But when I asked to remain, my first instinct was relief. God damn it, I want to live. No, I want to survive. Let's see the result of the battle at least. He stand up and wore his hood. He thought, if they won I will bring them back, if they lost I should go report it. It should be fine if I was looking out from far away. Dion gets out of the bushes and he looked from above the cliff. He saw the hero surrounded by the demon, and the Demon King was there also. He thought that it's already over, it's too overwhelming. The hero is bloody kneeling in front of the Demon King. The Demon King asked the hero for his last word. The hero smiled and a dazzling light came out of his body. The light was brimming, it even reached Dion uphill. Dion thought that it was a self-destruct. Is this how it ends? I need to report this to the Empire. Suddenly a demon appeared from Dion's back and asked who he is. Dion was surprised. The demon says that this small fry was hiding. He swung his weapon to Dion and he thought it was his end. In the midst of the chaotic battle, a menacing demon lunged at Dion with a sword in hand, ready to strike. With a powerful swing, the demon's blade descended, but it found nothing but the cold ground as Dion skillfully evaded the attack. Confused by the sudden and unprovoked assault, Dion questioned the demon's motives. Undeterred, the demon launched another attack, and although Dion managed to evade most of it, a sharp cut grazed his face, causing it to bleed. Dion realized that if things continued like this, escape would be impossible. He needed a plan. As the demon prepared to strike again, Dion swiftly sidestepped and closed the gap, positioning himself beneath the demon. Using the demon's knee as a platform, he leaped high into the air and drove his knife into the demon's neck. The demon glared at Dion, infuriated, and attempted to grab him. However, Dion knew his initial stab had been too shallow to penetrate deeply. He needed to avoid the demon's grasp. Suddenly, the ground gave way under their combined weight, and they tumbled off a cliff. Dion clung to his knife, still embedded in the demon's flesh. The impact at the bottom of the cliff was jarring, and the demons below watched in astonishment as the dust gradually settled. To their surprise, Dion emerged above the lifeless ogre demon. Dion couldn't believe he had survived the fall, and he realized that he must have landed on top of the ogre. He thought to himself, I guess you can stab an ogre if you put all your weight behind it. However, he soon grasped the gravity of his situation, realizing that he had landed in the heart of the enemy camp. As Dion stood there, a formidable figure appeared before him, the Demon King, arms folded, with a menacing glare that seemed to spell doom. Next to him, the hero, wounded and struggling to speak, questioned Dion's presence and why he hadn't fled when the hero was about to self-destruct. Dion replied, I'm sorry, I wanted to fulfill my duty. To his astonishment, the hero had abandoned his self-destructive plan. The hero's thoughts were filled with admiration for Dion's kindness and loyalty, and he wished that Dion could become the next hero. The hero's body began to emit a brilliant light, unlike the destructive one seen before. Dion watched in awe as the hero's consciousness faded, and he prayed for Dion to inherit some of his power. A radiant light enveloped Dion as the hero's power transferred to him. Dion was puzzled, wondering if it was even possible to transfer a hero's power through sheer will. Despite the infusion of power, Dion felt no immediate change in his abilities. Demons around them were bewildered, speculating whether Dion had killed the hero or not, as he coughed up blood, attributing it to his fall from the cliff. Dion began to accept his impending fate, realizing that he was outnumbered and severely injured. However, his resolve remained unbroken. The Demon King, curious about Dion's reaction, asked for his name. Dion decided it was best to humor the Demon King, responding, Deon Hart. As he considered his options, Dion contemplated using this unexpected situation to his advantage, thinking that he might escape when the opportunity arose. Surprisingly, the Demon King expressed interest in Dion joining the demon army, leaving Dion momentarily surprised. The Demon King assured him that there would be no opposition from humans or demons after witnessing what had transpired. As Dion looked at the lifeless ogre and hero beside him, he realized that survival had taken an unforeseen turn, and he muttered to himself, I tried to survive, but I never thought I'd survive like this. The scene shifted back to reality, with Dion seated inside a carriage. He couldn't help but reflect on recent events, thinking, it started from that day. All the people in the Demon King's castle, the king himself included, share the deluded opinion that I'm astoundingly powerful. They should really tone it down a notch. They've gone so far that I've become deathly afraid of the future. Just then, a voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Ed, calling out to Dion, announcing their arrival. They had reached the border between the human world and the demon realm, the front lines where ceaseless battles raged between demons and the Empire. Upon disembarking from the carriage, Dion was met by the First Corps commander, who greeted him warmly, saying, I've been waiting for you. Dion couldn't help but notice the commander's worn appearance, and he thought to himself, judging from his shabby state, things must be really bad here. Dion reciprocated the greeting with a handshake, even exchanging pleasantries with the Zero Corps commander. As Dion settled into this unfamiliar environment, he couldn't help but reflect on the decision he had made earlier. He ruminated, but I thought I would die if I refused, so I couldn't help it. I should have turned him down right then and there, but I thought I would die if I refused. He was referring to the king's offer to join the demon army, and despite his inner turmoil, he maintained a forced smile. Observing Dion's demeanor, the First Corps commander, Jakar, noted to himself, as expected, his expression has eased up after we left the Demon King's castle. I'm sure he's looking forward to the battle. Jakar then informed Dion, sorry to disappoint you, but there is currently a lull in the fighting. We don't know when the battle will resume, so you can prepare in advance. Dion was taken aback by this news and questioned, what? What are you talking about? Who's looking forward to what? He couldn't fathom the situation and asked if Jakar was referring to the core. Jakar clarified, no, I'm naturally referring to you as well. I would like you to step into battle as soon as the Empire troops start attacking. Dion, visibly surprised and filled with trepidation, stammered, you want me to fight too? The scene shifted to the human world's front lines, specifically the Empire's barracks. A human soldier was reporting to the Empire's hero, Cruel, about the situation. He mentioned that according to their scouts, the Zero Corps commander would be participating in the upcoming battle, and the Demon King's troops seemed to be in high spirits as of yesterday. On the other hand, the Empire's troops were not as confident. Cruel, the hero, interrupted the soldier's report and thought to himself, what a headache. Why did that infamous bastard come down here? The Zero Corps commander, the Joker of the Demon King, and the presence that's known to be even more outstanding than the First Corps commander, who's supposed to be the strongest out of all 12 commanders. The soldier asked the hero what they should do in response to this news, expressing concerns about their chances of victory. Cruel, deep in thought, finally replied, we will send an assassin. The soldier was taken aback, wondering if they were truly considering assassinating the Zero Corps commander. Cruel elaborated, if the Zero Corps commander actually exists, that is. I know his rumors are incredible, but no one has been able to confirm these rumors. Perhaps the Zero Corps commander's existence itself is an illusion created by the Demon King to lift their spirits. If we can reveal the truth with one assassin, it will be a huge accomplishment. Prioritize getting information on the Zero Corps commander. The scene then shifted to Dion and Ed, with Ed preparing Dion for the upcoming battle. Ed began by outfitting Dion with a specialized bondage cloth, covering his entire body. Dion was clearly apprehensive, thinking to himself, do I seriously have to participate in the battle, too? Although I was worried because of the pressure and the outcome, I never resented the position of the Zero Corps commander. It was actually convenient because everyone was delusional and avoided me. But today, I really resent this position I hold. Ed noticed Dion's unease and asked if he was feeling unwell. Dion assured him that he was fine, and Ed continued to secure the bondage cloth. Dion, now in a more serious tone, told Ed not to be too careful, indicating that he was planning something. Ed was concerned, but continued with the preparations. Dion's thoughts wandered, pondering why Ed remained loyal to him despite his weaknesses and shortcomings. He questioned what was so charming about him and why Ed didn't complain. Ed completed Dion's battle outfit, and Dion, covered in the bondage cloth and wearing a red cloak and hood, looked like an assassin. Ed informed Dion that the cloth he was wearing had been specially made by the Demon King using magic. It would deflect the sun and regulate Dion's body temperature. Dion acknowledged this, but was annoyed by how comfortable he felt. Ed emphasized that with the Zero Corps and Dion, they had nothing to worry about in the upcoming battle. Dion mentioned his intention to check on the 9 Corps commander's corpse and survey the area around the tent. Ed was concerned, suggesting Dion save his energy for the battle, but Dion insisted that he was already strong enough, but it was just an excuse. He's going to buy himself time and look for places to hide. Outside, the demon soldiers noticed Dion's presence and began discussing their anticipation of victory. The First Corps commander, Jakar, observed their spirited attitude, reaffirming the Demon King's decision. Even with his presence alone, their spirits are lifted. Dion, amidst the demons, wished they wouldn't pay attention to him, but they continued to do so. An assassin sent by the Empire's hero observed the situation from above, surprised that the Zero Corps commander actually existed. The assassin contemplated testing Dion's skills to gather information for the Empire. The tension in the situation continued to mount as the assassin took out a lethal poison dart, aiming it at Dion's head. Dion considered returning to his tent, but stumbled over a small rock, causing him to fall to his knee. It was at that exact moment that the assassin released the dart, but due to Dion's unexpected fall, the dart missed its mark and struck a nearby tree instead. Thinking he had successfully dodged the dart, the assassin swiftly moved among the branches of the tree to make his escape. Meanwhile, Dion cursed his luck, frustrated that he had almost fallen due to the rock on the path. He couldn't help but wonder why the paths weren't properly cleared. A concerned demon girl approached Dion, asking if he was okay, to which he sat down and pretended to be stretching. She reassured him, calling him Sir Arut and expressing her relief that he was already warming up. While Dion contemplated the lack of good hiding spots and decided to stay in the tent, the assassin continued to watch him closely. The assassin understood that Dion didn't want his subordinates to know about the suspicious intruder, and would likely inform his most trustworthy subordinate to handle the situation in secret. The assassin decided to bide his time for another opportunity to assess Dion's skills. As Ed arrived with a glass and a bottle of wine, he noticed that Dion had returned. He asked if he knew anything about the new hero among the human troops, mentioning that the second corps commander was investigating him. Dion and Ed engaged in conversation while the assassin remained hidden in the ceiling. The assassin grew anxious, wondering why Dion was talking about Cruel, the hero, rather than addressing his presence. He began to worry that Dion had already figured out that Cruel was behind the assassination attempt. Dion noticed the bottle of wine that Ed had brought and expressed his frustration that he wasn't allowed to drink, yet Ed was drinking by himself. However, Ed clarified that he had brought the wine for Dion. Dion's expression changed, and he asked Ed if he could drink it. Ed agreed, stating that it was acceptable to drink to ease nerves on the battlefield. He poured wine into Dion's glass, felt relieved, thinking that he had narrowly avoided a dangerous situation. After Ed pours wine to Dion's glass, they hear something from the outside and they look away. It was this time when something splashed on his glass. The assassin successfully put a poison in Dion's glass. The assassin thought, "What a fool." He was distracted by the rock I threw. Thankfully, he didn't notice I poisoned his drink. The deadliest poison that will kill you instantly with just one sip. As Dion nearly put the glass in his mouth, the assassin was patiently waiting and he thought, yes, this is the end for the Zero Corps commander. When Dion was about to drink, suddenly the glass fell to the ground. Seems like Dion threw it. The assassin was surprised. There seems to be a pest among us, Dion says. As the glass fell and shattered, Dion quickly attempted to explain the situation to Ed. In a flashback moment, he thought about his frustration with a pesky fly that had been bothering him just before the glass fell. He wanted to swat the fly away, but the glass dropped unexpectedly. Ed, however, was not fooled by the seemingly innocent accident. He examined the broken glass and immediately recognized the signs of poison. Realization struck him, and he angrily confirmed that it was indeed an attempt on Dion's life. Ed's anger flared, and he declared that there must have been an intruder involved. He scanned the ceiling for any signs of the would-be assassin, but found nothing. It became clear to him that someone had tried to poison Dion. Meanwhile, the assassin had managed to escape and was making his way back to the Empire. He understood the gravity of the situation and knew he had to report to Sir Cruel as soon as possible. The encounter had revealed that the Zero Corps commander possessed extraordinary abilities, confirming that the rumors about him were not exaggerated. The assassin realized that Dion was a formidable and dangerous adversary. As he leaped from tree to tree, he couldn't help but feel a sense of dread about the task that lay ahead. Jakar's voice echoed through the dimly lit chamber as he announced the shocking intrusion. Somebody dared to break into this place. Their objective was to assassinate the Zero Corps commander. The words hung heavily in the air, sending ripples of fear and disbelief through the assembled soldiers. The reaction was immediate. One soldier blurted out in astonishment, "What? The Zero Corps commander?" Another, equally bewildered, replied, "But how were they able to get in here?" Apart from the Zero Corps commander, nobody seemed to have noticed a thing. Jakar, his expression a mix of anger and disappointment, spoke firmly. "I will punish you for letting the intruder get in here at a later time. For now, make sure there are no more enemies in the area." The soldiers sprang into action, securing the surroundings to prevent any further threats. Dion, the Zero Corps commander, stood with his arms folded, contemplating the danger he had just narrowly escaped. He couldn't help but think, wow, I seriously could have died. Ed, one of his trusted soldiers, approached and offered a heartfelt apology. "My apologies, Sir Arut. Due to my stupidity, I did not notice the intrusion until it was too late." Dion reassured Ed, "I didn't think they could get past you, Ed. And that shows just how skilled the assassin is." But in his mind, he couldn't help but entertain thoughts of stepping down from his position. He muttered to himself, I should quit being the Zero Corps commander or something. Because of this stupid position, even the bastards from the Empire want to kill me. He added bitterly, I didn't even get to drink because of that freaking assassin. Ed, willing to accept any punishment for his failure, said, whatever punishment you inflict, Ed will accept it. Dion then inquired about the wine. Before you poured me the drink, the bottle was unopened, right? Ed confirmed that it was, not realizing the hidden intentions behind the question. Dion, with a sly smirk, concluded, then that means that the wine is completely safe to drink. He had discerned that the poison was in the glass, not the bottle, and a sense of triumph filled him. Meanwhile, in the Empire, the assassin responsible for the intrusion reported on the Zero Corps commander's strength. The assassin remarked, there doesn't seem to be a single lie in these rumors. If things keep proceeding like this, the Empire will not stand a chance. The Empire's commander acknowledged the threat, realizing that they needed a way to counter the powerful Zero Corps commander, who now sided with the demon faction. He was thinking of calling the other hero. The commander spoke to a soldier, saying, do you mean the other hero of the Empire? And the reply came, that's right. But since he's not here right now, we will retreat. The soldier expressed concern, fearing that a retreat might make them appear weak. The commander, however, had a strategic plan in mind. He explained, we will retreat, but if there are any shits that follow, we just need to make sure to give them a most certain death. Their intention was to create an illusion of invincibility and reluctance to engage with the demon faction. The soldier questioned what they would tell the Empire about their retreat, and the commander replied, the orders I received were to repossess the Empire's lands taken over by the demonic realm, not expand our territory into the demonic realm. We have already reclaimed the Empire's land. We do not need to cause any more friction between our realms, so we decided to retreat. The commander was mindful of his reputation as a hero and wanted to avoid any tarnish. He thought, I don't need to go overboard and ruin my debut as a hero. I've come this far. I won't let anything smear my reputation as a hero. As the Empire's commander contemplated their course of action, another soldier rushed in with dire news. The demon troops were advancing, led by none other than the Zero Corps commander. The commander and the soldier conversing earlier were shocked by this unexpected turn of events. The commander realized that their carefully laid plans were unraveling, and nothing was going according to their strategy. The scene shifted back to Dion, who had swiftly become a menacing force, slashing through soldiers with his dagger. His laughter echoed through the chaos as he struck down his foes. Ed, seeing Dion while holding a soldier, exclaimed, he drank the entire bottle, he's completely drunk right now. He was strangely elated, thinking that the situation couldn't get any better. And because of Sir Arut, everyone is in high spirits. Ed hurled the soldier aside, and the soldier's gaze fixed upon the commander of the Zero Corps. In his thoughts, the soldier pondered, who else could you label a demon if not that man? Despite clutching a sword, terror had gripped his mind. Dion leaned in close to the soldier, questioning, why are you seated here? If you wish to survive, you must fight. Otherwise, your demise will be swift. Dion raised his dagger, poised to strike the soldier, but an unexpected beam of light intercepted him, causing Dion to scatter. Stunned, Ed rushed to Dion's side. Ed exclaimed, how dare you harm Sir Arut? Just then, a hero arrived on the scene, the one responsible for unleashing the radiant beam that struck the Zero Corps commander. The hero remarked that his attack was intended to be a one-shot kill. Ed, turning his attention to the hero, realized it was indeed him, fully clad in armor. Meanwhile, Dion, bloody and coughing, caught Ed's concern. He removed a necklace, which had shattered. This necklace was a defensive talisman from Ririnal that had saved him from instant death. Without it, Dion would have perished from the previous attack. The human soldier wept as help arrived, and the renowned battlefield star, Sir Cruel, joined them. The soldier found solace in the hero's presence, but Dion abruptly rose and swiftly killed the soldier. He then continued toward the hero, inquiring, so, are you the new hero? The hero replied, that's what they call me, though I feel undeserving of that title. Dion mentioned having heard a lot about the hero and asked if they had met before, as his voice sounded familiar. He requested the hero to remove his helmet, but the hero refused, not willing to reveal his identity to his enemies. Cruel also found Dion oddly familiar, but had never seen the Zero Corps commander before. Dion, juggling his dagger, remarked that since the hero wouldn't take off his helmet, he would do it for him. Dion swiftly moved toward the hero, attempting to stab him, but the hero evaded the attack by bending down. Cruel noticed agility and resolved to track his movements. The two engaged in a heated battle, clashing weapons and evading strikes. Cruel noted that Dion's attacks lacked force. In a powerful swing, Cruel managed to disarm Dion. Dion glanced at his weapon just as the hero prepared to strike. Swiftly, he retrieved his spare weapon from his thigh and deflected the hero's attack. Amid their exchanged blows, Dion executed a well-aimed kick to the hero's stomach, effectively creating a gap between them. The hero observed that Dion's attack seemed weak and questioned if he was fighting at full strength. Suddenly, Dion stopped fighting, declaring that it was enough for the day. The hero insisted that the war wasn't over, but Dion argued that it was. He pointed out that the hero had killed the 9 Corps commander and invaded the demonic realm, despite regaining the Empire's land. Dion suggested they settle for defending their respective territories, a proposal the hero eventually agreed to. Dion became serious, warning the hero that if he wanted to continue the war, his troops might not support him. The hero looked at his injured soldiers and decided to retreat. Cruel acknowledged that he had lost his composure for a moment, but believed it was wise to stick to the original plan. As Dion walked toward the demon soldiers, they expressed relief and praised Sir Arut for their victory. Jakar approached Dion, tapped his shoulder, and commended his efforts. However, Dion suddenly collapsed, and Jakar caught him. Jakar realized that Dion had been fighting while seriously ill, and had suppressed his desire to keep fighting to prevent their opponent from noticing his condition. Ben and Ed assisted Dion, noting his exhaustion from fighting while weakened. Jakar was deeply impressed by Dion's remarkable performance. Jakar bid farewell as they took Dion to his quarters and reflected on the Zero Corps commander's actions during the battle. Jakar stood there, watching as Ed and Ben escorted the weakened Zero Corps commander, Dion, to his quarters. In his mind, he couldn't help but ponder the remarkable turn of events. The Zero Corps commander appeared out of the blue, Jakar mused, his thoughts racing. He secured a position of power, eliminated the former 7 Corps commander, and even intervened to prevent the hero from self-destructing. And to top it all off, the Demon King himself recruited him. Although Jakar acknowledged that he couldn't deny the reality of these events, a sense of unease lingered deep within him. The sudden arrival and rapid ascension of the enigmatic Zero Corps commander had left him with a nagging feeling that there was more to this figure than met the eye. But today, on the battlefield, Dion had showcased his prowess and demonstrated why he held the title of the Zero Corps commander of the Demon Realm. His strategic brilliance and combat skills were undeniable, and Jakar couldn't deny the value he brought to their cause. Resolute in his decision, Jakar made a silent vow as he watched them depart. Leave everything else to me, he thought, his determination clear. I'll stand as the guardian of our realm, alongside Demon Arut. The scene shifted to Ririnal, who sensed that the necklace had broken. A demon beside her misunderstood the situation, fearing that a demonic monster had breached the seal. Ririnal clarified that it was the necklace she had given to Arut that had broken. She became worried for Arut's safety and decided to head over to him despite the demon soldier's objections. She reassured herself by saying, "Don't worry, Sir Arut, Ririnal is coming." The next chapter began with the Demon King eagerly awaiting the return of the Zero Corps. As Dion arrived, the king warmly welcomed him and acknowledged his achievements, praising him for his exceptional work on the battlefield. The Demon King remarked, "I heard it from Jakar. You did a number this time, too, huh? You never let me down. So, how was your meeting with the new hero?" Dion's expression remained serious as he replied, "There's something I need to inform you about the new hero." The king sensed that Dion hadn't fully calmed down from the recent battle, which added an air of urgency to the conversation. The king suggested they move inside to chat and mentioned that the 2nd Corps commander had brought new information about the hero as well. Dion's expression changed when he heard about the 2nd Corps commander, but the king reassured him, "Judging from your expression, you don't like the 2nd Corps commander very much. But they're very busy right now sorting through all the information. won't be able to get out of their room for a while, so don't worry, changed and come to the office. In the office, the Demon King handed Dion some documents and encouraged him to take a look because they contained fascinating information. As Dion began to read the contents, he suddenly felt surprised and disoriented. He couldn't understand how he had ended up back at the Demon King's castle when he had just been on the battlefield moments ago. Ririnal was there, crying and hugging him tightly. She expressed immense relief at his safety, leaving Dion puzzled. A flashback revealed Dion holding a bottle of wine, making him wonder if he had blacked out after drinking just one bottle. Ririnal explained that the necklace she had given him had broken, so she rushed to the battlefield to find him. To her astonishment, she learned that he had already returned to the Demon King's castle. Dion couldn't help but be surprised by this revelation and questioned why the necklace, supposed to prevent sudden death, had failed. Ririnal continued to praise Dion for his accomplishments on the battlefield, describing him as our Sir Arut. Dion couldn't shake off the unsettling feeling of having almost died and began contemplating whether he should quit drinking altogether. However, his attention was soon drawn to the paper he held in his hands. When he opened it, he saw the face of the hero, Cruel Heart. Instantly, Dion's mind raced back to a painful memory from his past. He couldn't forget the name and the person associated with it, his older brother. In a flashback scene, Deon Hart knelt, covered in blood, while his brother, Cruel Heart, stood before him, attempting to swing a sword at him. The scene transitioned back to the present, leaving Dion with a heavy sense of unease and unresolved emotions. Dion found himself pondering the sudden revelation that Cruel, his older brother, had become the hero. He couldn't help but wonder when this transformation had occurred. Sensing the need to address these thoughts, he gently tapped Ririnal on the head and told her that he had something to take care of. With a farewell to Ririnal, he made his way out. A curious demon servant approached Ririnal and asked why the Zero Corps commander had suddenly appeared angry, noting how scary he could be. In response, Ririnal blushed and remarked on how attractive she found Dion. In his room, Dion's mind raced. He couldn't help but feel a growing anger toward the Emperor. Emperor, he seethed internally. You already know everything that happened, yet you still had Cruel take the hero position. Dion couldn't shake the feeling that the Emperor was well aware of his involvement with the demon army. Memories of the recent encounter with the Demon King flooded his mind. The king had asked him if it was time for Dion to make a trip to the Empire, and Dion had agreed, planning to gather more information about the new hero. As he recalled the conversation, Dion realized that the king had placed a tracking spell on his shoulder, serving as a form of insurance. The Demon King had emphasized that Dion should keep him informed of anything useful. The core commander of the demon realm and the hero of the Empire, the king had stated. Dion couldn't help but wonder why he had been chosen to act as a spy for the Demon King. He theorized that extreme stress might trigger memory loss, vowing to remain stress-free to preserve his memories. Ed suddenly entered the room, interrupting Dion's thoughts. Ed mentioned that he had heard the king discussing Dion's trip to the human realm and asked if there was anything he wanted to convey. Dion noted that Ed had been absent from his side but was in the company of the Demon King. He replied that it was indeed time for his return and that there was something personal he needed to investigate. He then turned the question around, asking Ed if there was something he wished to share. Ed's thoughts continued to dwell on the recent conversation he had with the Demon King. The king had approached Ed with an unexpected offer, asking if he wanted to become the corps commander since the 9 corps commander position had become vacant. As the king explained that the corps commander position had remained filled until now, he admitted that he had placed Ed in the role of vice commander of the Zero Corps, because he believed Ed possessed the qualifications and skills necessary to be a corps commander. The offer had taken Ed by surprise. Ed's mind raced as he considered the prospect. I had forgotten while I was serving Sir Arut, he thought. But it's a position I've always wanted, a corps commander. Turning to the king, Ed inquired about the fate of the vice commander of the Zero Corps if he were to accept the role of corps commander. The king responded that they would need to recruit someone new who was next in line after Ed to fill the vice commander position. The king made it clear that he wasn't forcing Ed into the role but raised an important question: how would Ed feel if a junior, someone weaker than him, were to become his superior? The decision was left in Ed's hands, with the king emphasizing the potential consequences of his choice. Back in the present, Ed found himself discussing the matter with Dion. Dion asked if the Demon King had said anything to him, suspecting that Ed might have faced repercussions for his earlier drinking incident. However, Ed chose not to reveal the true nature of his conversation with the king. Instead, Ed informed Dion that he intended to have the chef prepare something special before Dion left for the human realm. Dion sensed that Ed had something on his mind but didn't want to pressure him. A demon soldier saluted them, notifying Dion that his carriage was ready. Dion acknowledged the soldier's message and took a moment to convey his final words to Ed. He urged Ed to take good care of himself until his return. As Dion prepared to leave, a thought crossed his mind. Had Ed asked to step down from his role as vice commander because it had been challenging to serve him? Dion decided to pose the question to Ed directly, seeking clarity on the matter. He asked Ed if there was anything specific he desired from the human realm, considering Dion's upcoming trip to the Empire. Dion even suggested that he might bring back some snacks or items that could be useful for a long time. Ed replied that he didn't have any particular requests. Dion decided to choose something appropriate instead, determined to show his appreciation for his loyal vice commander. As Dion prepared to depart, Ed issued a final reminder. He urged Dion to always wear the necklace from Ben and the robe while in the human realm, ensuring his safety. Inwardly, Ed marveled at the unique bond he shared with Dion. Is there any other superior in all of the demon realm who is this concerned about his juniors? Ed wondered. And there's no superior who needs so much help, either. But the fact that Sir Arut needs me does not make me upset. Ed's respect and loyalty for Dion shone brightly. He recognized that he didn't want to become a corps commander, he cherished his role as vice commander for Sir Arut. Above all, he wanted to be of help to Dion. With unwavering dedication, Ed concluded his thoughts as Dion departed. So, Zero Corps Commander, wherever you go, please have a safe trip. Ed vowed to await Dion's return, ready to resume his role as vice commander and offer his unwavering support. The following day, in front of the Hart estate, 2 guards stood watch at the gate. They noticed someone approaching and halted the man, informing him that this was the Hart estate, and the Count was currently away. They firmly stated that outsiders were not permitted to enter. Little did they know that the man they were addressing was none other than Deon Hart himself. Dion, with an air of authority, ordered the guards to open the gates. The guards remained resolute, questioning his attitude. They warned him that if he came any closer, they would attack. Dion, with a hint of annoyance, removed his hood and mask, revealing his identity. He demanded, "I'm trying to enter my own home, and you dare to stop me?" The guards quickly recognized him and respectfully addressed him as my lord. Inside the Hart estate, the maids hurriedly spread the word that the Count had returned. As Dion entered the house, the maids collectively welcomed him with reverence, causing Dion to think, "I told them they don't need to greet me like this." As he removed his coat, the butler greeted him, acknowledging his return with a warm welcome. Dion reflected on how the butler had been a part of the household since he inherited the estate. Seeing the familiar faces made him truly feel like he had returned home. He greeted the butler, remarking that it had indeed been a long time. The butler concurred, mentioning that it had been around 6 months. He inquired about Dion's successful completion of the monster subjugation mission, to which Dion responded affirmatively. However, the butler couldn't help but notice Dion's injuries and expressed his concern. He humorously touched Dion's face and remarked that he was too old to revenge him from the monsters. Dion reassured the butler that he was no longer a child and that it was fine. The butler acknowledged his status as an honored count and suggested having Dion's room freshened up, considering his weariness from the long journey home. However, Dion declined, explaining that he intended to see the Emperor right away, despite his own desire to lie down. Dion cast his gaze upon a large picture on the wall inside his house, a family portrait of the Hart family. The image was partially blocked by curtains, prompting Dion's thoughts to turn to the Emperor. He realized that the Emperor was likely aware of his return to the Empire and that he needed to question him about his brother, Cruel. The butler vowed to fulfill Dion's orders and make the necessary preparations. Meanwhile, the scene shifted to Duke Illister Starb, who mused about Deon Hart's return and referred to him as the Emperor's loyal servant. He questioned Cruel, inquiring about his plans now that his younger brother had returned. Cruel remained silent as Duke Illister Starb discussed their plans. Duke suggested that Cruel's request to the Assassination Guild might risk exposing their intentions. Instead, he hinted at another card they had up their sleeve and turned to Shailin for confirmation. Shailin inquired if Duke was referring to the Revolutionary Army, and Duke affirmed it. He believed that if this group, which sought to overthrow the Emperor, became involved, the risk of exposure would matter less. He noted that he hadn't expected Cruel to overlook such an obvious strategy. Cruel apologized for his oversight and agreed to contact the Revolutionary Army. Duke wondered about the skills of the Emperor's hero, the honorary Count Deon Hart. Meanwhile, the scene shifted to Dion, who was being dressed by maids. They complimented him, saying that the outfit suited him well. Dion found the process chaotic, as everything from bathing to getting dressed had happened in an instant. He was relieved when it was finally over. Two maids engaged in a discussion about Dion's attire. One thought that a military uniform would make him look more outstanding, but the other argued that the trend was to appear austere, even though all the outfits were white. The butler handed Dion a mask, advising him to wear it due to the strong sunlight. Dion thanked the butler and expressed his gratitude for looking after the estate while he was away. The butler humbly responded, expressing pride in seeing Dion grow into a great count and suggesting retirement once Dion returned. Dion was taken aback by the idea and attempted to dissuade the butler, but the butler quickly revealed he was joking. As Dion realized he had fallen for the butler's jest, he couldn't help feeling irritated. The butler, still smiling, admitted that seeing Dion flustered was his only source of joy. The butler, named Remember, pushed Dion playfully and then mentioned that the carriage was ready. Outside, there was a beautiful garden and a fountain where Dion's carriage awaited. As Dion boarded the carriage, he expressed his preference for fewer guards, as few in the Empire knew of his return, and he expected the journey wouldn't take long. Dion, sitting in the carriage, expressed his preference for only a few guards, as few people in the Empire knew of his return, and he believed the journey wouldn't take long. As the carriage prepared to depart, an officer outside informed him that half of the troops would follow him and asked the guards to stay within their ranks. Dion couldn't help but think about the Emperor of the Empire, Eduardo Desire. He was known for seizing the throne by eliminating all his competitors, including his own siblings, which resulted in a gruesome coronation ceremony where he was crowned while covered in their blood. The Emperor even changed the name of the nation from the Old Kingdom to the Empire and declared it under his rule, sparking a war that lasted 8 years. Dion had participated in that war, which had been a nightmarish experience, leading to the loss of half his memories. However, he remembered his life mission from that time. While lost in his thoughts, the carriage suddenly started acting strangely. Dion asked the driver what was happening and then stepped out of the carriage to investigate. He was shocked to see his soldiers engaged in a battle with soldiers wearing blue garments with a single white bird emblem, the Revolutionary Army. Dion realized that they had somehow learned of his return, and he knew the situation was dire. He decided to join the battle to help his soldiers. However, before he could act, a man appeared beside him and grabbed his neck while holding an axe. The man taunted Dion, calling him the dog of the Empire. It seemed that Dion had been caught off guard, and his situation had taken a dangerous turn. In the preceding chapter, Dion found himself ensnared by a member of the Revolutionary Army. As his captor's grip tightened around his neck, Dion's thoughts turned to the despised Emperor, whom he blamed for spawning such reckless individuals. Regardless of their beliefs, he cared little for them, all he wanted was to avoid becoming their victim. The man confronting Dion nervously admitted, "I was apprehensive because they hailed you as a hero, but you appear to be nothing more than a scrawny weakling." Dion countered with resolve, asserting, "I'm not a pawn of the Emperor." Suddenly, to Dion's surprise, the man offered an apology and inquired about his name. Dion revealed himself as Deon Hart. However, the man seized him once again, his anger boiling over as he accused Dion of being the Emperor's lackey. Dion vehemently denied this accusation, asserting, "I am Deon Hart." The man remarked, "White hair, red eyes, and bad manners, just as the rumors described." Meanwhile, Dion discreetly searched for his dagger. With a swift movement, he retrieved the weapon and attempted to strike the man, but the attempt was deftly thwarted by the man's axe. The man scolded him, commanding, "Stop fooling around," before forcefully slamming Dion to the ground. As the man readied himself to deliver a fatal blow with his raised axe, a sudden interruption occurred. Another individual, armed with a spear, stepped in and disarmed the man. It was revealed that this newcomer was a member of the murderous Ghost Knights, a group born from the 8-Year War, and led by none other than Deon Hart himself. Panicking, the man exclaimed, "How did they find us?" "Block them." A fellow knight proposed, "I don't think we can simply let them go. Should we create a commotion?" The knight in command ordered the execution of all the men who had attempted to ambush Dion. The murderous Ghost Knights showed no mercy as they dispatched the Revolutionary Army members with ruthless efficiency. The man pondered, what's terrifying about them isn't their skills, but the fact that they have completely abandoned rationality. It's their sheer brutality, reminiscent of their masters. If we engage them head-on, we'll be at a disadvantage. We must eliminate Dion and retreat. Even as the man continued to hold Dion by the neck, Dion attempted to injure him using only his bare hands. In response, the man hurled Dion into a nearby carriage, feeling the pain in his arm. Dion expressed remorse, confessing that he had intended to sever the arm completely, but lacked the strength to do so. However, he proceeded to finish off the man by wielding the axe with both hands and delivering a fatal blow. Stepping outside the carriage, a soldier spotted him and addressed him as captain. Dion debated whether to cease his actions, but he ultimately decided against it, thinking, "He's already dead, should I continue? No, I need to set an example so that no one else will dare to attack me again. Just a bit more to ensure that nobody will forget this scene." Dion continued to stab the lifeless body, his actions observed by the murderous Ghost Knights who commented, "That's our captain, he's ruthless." One knight mused, "Doesn't it seem like he didn't need us in the first place?" The response came, "What are you saying? He only brought mediocre men like them. If it weren't for us, things would have been much more complicated." Dion then redirected his attention to the knights and ordered them to eliminate the remaining enemies. The scene transitioned to the Empire's castle, where Dion's carriage had arrived, its exterior marred by splotches that initially puzzled the guards. However, they soon recognized the stains as blood. Stepping out of the carriage, Dion confronted the guards, who informed him that he couldn't enter the royal palace without an invitation. Dion confidently stated, "I am Deon Hart, I've come to see His Majesty." The guards promptly apologized, knowing that Dion had been granted direct permission by the king to visit at his leisure, though they were taken aback by his disheveled appearance. Dion inquired about the king's whereabouts, and the guard informed him that the king was in the banquet hall. Inside the hall, a grand celebration was in progress, celebrating the triumphant debut and success of the new hero. A devilish smile crossed Dion's face as he contemplated the presence of his brother, the newly acclaimed hero, among the celebrants. He suspected that his brother was in attendance at the banquet. Inside the grand halls of the Empire's royal palace, the emperor was engaged in a conversation. "So, you've successfully reclaimed the land taken by the demons? How remarkable," he praised. Kneeling before the emperor was Cruel Heart, the newly acclaimed hero. He humbly responded, "I merely fulfilled my duty." The emperor rose from his seat, holding a glass of wine aloft, and declared, "Today, we celebrate the birth of a new hero named Cruel Heart and congratulate him on his debut. Please enjoy yourselves." However, the emperor's words were abruptly interrupted when Deon Hart entered the hall, his clothing and body stained with blood from the previous battle. As he walked in, a nearby observer remarked, "I don't know who that is, but he's incredibly rude. Wait, although I can't see clearly, doesn't he have red eyes and white hair?" It became apparent that some recognized him as the honorary Count Deon Hart. Ignoring the commotion, Dion continued to make his way through the hall, passing by Cruel Heart. Inwardly, he thought, "It seems my beloved brother has somehow obtained the hero's fragment." Dion then knelt before the emperor, showing his respect, and greeted him with, "Brilliance to the Empire. Your servant, Deon Hart, greets the Empire." The hall buzzed with murmurs as onlookers commented on his blood-stained appearance and peculiar red eyes and white hair, some even speculating about his place within the Hart family. The Duke, observing the situation, reflected, "Deon Hart, you've returned alive. How incredibly tenacious." Addressing Dion, the Emperor mentioned, "It's been a long time, Honorary Count Deon Hart. I did say you could come see me whenever you like. What kind of disrespect is this?" Dion, apologizing, explained, "There was an ambush on the way here." The Emperor, somewhat puzzled, inquired, "An ambush? Who would dare to attack the hero of the Empire?" He silently thanked himself for having sent knights to escort Dion. "It seems you have quite a lot to say to me. Why don't we take this elsewhere, as I have things I want to hear from you as well." The scene shifted to a private room where Dion and the Emperor engaged in a more private conversation. The Emperor expressed concern, "You said there was an ambush? I can already see it was the revolutionary army, no doubt. Sick bastards. So, are you feeling all right? Should I call a doctor?" Internally, the Emperor pondered, it is openly known that everyone looks at him negatively. What fools! What other talent has achieved as much as Deon Hart? As the vanguard of the 8-Year War, he accomplished a grander feat than any other. When he left as the hero's comrade, he managed to retrieve the corpse of the hero, which no one had been able to accomplish before. A hero who is defeated by the Demon King is normally tossed to the demons as fodder, so if Deon Hart had not been able to save him, the hero would have met the same fate. It is an incredible achievement to accomplish while facing off against the Demon King. However, there was a price to pay. The Emperor finally asked Dion, "Have you figured out a way to undo the curse?" At this moment, Dion recalled the seal of the Demon King but admitted, "I have not." Internally, Dion thought, "This isn't a curse, but a tracking spell." However, the Emperor thinks I have become weaker due to the curse of the Demon King. The Emperor continued the conversation, revealing, "I sent you to the Demon Realm since the Demon King is the only one who can undo the curse." Dion pondered, "He's using me as a spy at the Demon King's castle, but what a thing to say." The Emperor further mentioned, "I guess you need to go back to the Demon Realm, then. It gives me great discomfort to send such a rare talent to such a horrendous place." Dion reflected on the situation, thinking, "He's sending me back as a spy. Well, I didn't have any ways to reject him." The Emperor shifted the conversation, asking, "What's going on at the Demon King's castle these days?" Dion responded, "There isn't anything new, but I found the assassin you sent to the Demon King's castle. He turned out to be more than just a disposable pawn. He was a hero candidate. Why did you send him to the Demon Realm?" The Emperor explained, "He was trash that soiled the name of the hero. I figured he would die before even reaching the Demon Realm, but I guess he managed to survive because he had a fragment of the hero. But thanks to that trash, I think your status in the Demon Realm has become much better. Isn't that right, Zero Corps Commander Demon Arut?" Dion was surprised by this revelation, thinking, to think he knew so much already. "Apologies, I did not have any ways to reject him." The Emperor reassured him, saying, "It's fine. I didn't bring it up to blame you. The more you are accepted, the easier it'll be for you to intercept information. To be acknowledged even in the Demon Realm shows that you really are a true talent. Now, isn't there something you really wanted to ask me?" Dion took this opportunity to inquire, "Why did you place Cruel Heart in the position of the hero?" The Emperor understood the underlying motive behind Dion's question. "You already know, Your Majesty, that my only regret is that I wasn't able to kill Cruel Heart. He is the only survivor of the Hart family, aside from myself. No, he is the only remaining member of the Hart family who survived me, Deon Hart." The narrative then shifted to a flashback scene where a young Dion was seen gazing at a family portrait on the wall. Cruel called out to him, reminding him that their parents were waiting. Dion followed him, asking if it was already time for lunch. He quickly apologized, to which Cruel reassured him, saying it was all right, and they needed to hurry. However, Dion stopped his brother and expressed concern, "What if you get scolded too, brother, because of me?" Cruel responded, "I'm dirty because I just got back from training." Dion paused for a moment and said, "Sorry, it's okay with me even if your hands are dirty." Cruel continued walking, and Dion ran to catch up, urging him to wait. Suddenly, Cruel halted, and Dion bumped into him. Cruel remarked, "You must really like that family portrait, huh? You've been staring at it for days. Dion admitted, yeah. Whenever I look at it, I feel like it's telling me, we're family. Cruel dismissed his sentiment, stating, it's just a painting. Cruel then scolded Dion, saying, yes, so don't go roaming around too much and stay in your room. As the scene shifted, two maids were gossiping about Dion, with one expressing discomfort about his red eyes and white hair, while the other wondered why he was so different from the rest of the family. Unbeknownst to them, Dion was eavesdropping from behind a wall, contemplating, I've always felt like I was alone. But whenever I look at that family portrait, it feels like I'm a part of this family. The narrative then transitioned to a family dinner where their father inquired about their delay. Dion's mother expressed concern for his well-being, worried that he might have a fever. However, their father insisted that Dion couldn't stay at home forever. Their father mentioned attending a banquet at the royal family's palace that night, and Dion expressed his desire to join them. His father urged him to be cautious and not reveal his peculiarities to the world. Dion bent down, promising to remember his father's words. Reflecting on his appearance and frailty, Dion thought, I'm sure my parents are dissatisfied with me. An appearance that doesn't resemble them, and a weak body. They're just huge flaws in the highly renowned county. Cruel changed the subject, inquiring about a new swordmaster their father had hired. Dion couldn't help but think that Cruel was doing so to divert the conversation away from his own peculiarities. Their father chuckled, saying, since your skills just keep getting better, it's difficult to find a great swordmaster. Dion's mother added, although you say such things, weren't you excited while you were searching around? Internally, Dion observed, the atmosphere in the dining room changed as soon as my brother spoke. Brother really is amazing. Since I'm a lacking child, am I lonely even though we're together? Yes, this loneliness is completely my fault. That's all right. I'm part of the Hart family too. If I try, I'm sure I can do as well as my brother. Then my family will love me more. The narrative then shifted to a banquet scene where Dion, dressed in a robe and princely attire, was approached by another child who addressed him. Dion responded, asking if they were talking to him. Child approached Dion and asked if he was Deon Hart. Dion felt a rush of happiness, thinking, he's speaking to me. This is the first time I am speaking to anyone my age. I'm happy, but what if I make a mistake? Shyly, Dion replied with a simple hi. The child asked why Dion was by himself, and Dion explained that his family had gone to see his brother's swordmaster. The other child, with folded arms and an arrogant attitude, remarked, without you? You really have no clue, do you? Dion's initial happiness faded, and he responded more seriously. The child continued, saying, there's already a widespread rumor about you being the black sheep of the Hart family. Is it true that your family locked you up? Dion denied the rumors and said, no. Of course not. I just get sick a lot. However, the other child got closer and began belittling Dion, calling him a dirty bastard and claiming that white hair and red eyes were ominous. He insisted that even if they were family, they couldn't possibly love someone like Dion, who had been abandoned by the Hart family. Dion was on the verge of tears, but suddenly reacted by punching the other child in the face, shouting, stop it. Why are you uttering such nonsense when you know nothing? My family is nice to me. In retaliation, the child punched Dion back, holding him and repeatedly hitting him while insulting him further. Dion, lying on the ground and staring into nothingness, thought to himself, no, I'm not a monster. Fortunately, another child intervened, stopping the attack on Dion. Dion remained on the ground, lost in thought, until his older brother, Cruel, arrived. The narrative then shifted to a palace hospital where a doctor examined Dion. The doctor commented that Dion had a very weak body and was extremely vulnerable to stress. He also noted that Dion should be careful around sunlight, but mentioned that his liver seemed strong. Dion's mother expressed concern, asking the doctor if it was that bad, while his father appeared disappointed. Their father lamented, we've never had such a child in the Hart family. How could this happen? Dion looked at his parents and thought, Mother, Father, I'm sorry. I'll try harder. Please don't hate me. He tried to reach out to them, but Cruel grabbed his hand. Cruel reassured Dion, saying, it's all right. You don't need to do anything. Nobody has any expectations of you anyway. Monster. Dion was jolted awake from his dream, shouting in surprise. His parents heard his cry. His mother was deeply concerned and asked, "What happened? How could you get into a fight at the palace?" His father scolded him as well, expressing his frustration at Dion's behavior, saying, "I already told you that you need to be extra careful outside. Look at what you've done now." Dion apologized, explaining that the other kids had started the fight. However, the memory of being punched by the other child continued to haunt him. He hesitated to share this detail with his father, fearing that his father might think the same way as those kids did. In response, Dion downplayed the incident, telling them it was nothing. His mother burst into tears, while his father decided on a punishment, saying, "I guess it was too early for you to go outside. You will be prohibited from going outside for a while. Reflect on your actions in your room." Dion felt a deep sense of agony, not wanting to be abandoned or disappoint his parents. He yearned for their love and acceptance and vowed to try harder to overcome his weaknesses, determined to become someone his family would be proud of. He locked himself in his room, where two servants discussed his situation. One servant remarked that Master Dion hadn't come out of his room today either, and the other expressed sympathy, acknowledging the difficulties Dion faced in gaining recognition. From his room, Dion could hear the laughter of his family outside. He approached the window and saw his parents encouraging Cruel, who was receiving their support and attention. In his thoughts, Dion struggled with his desire for recognition, reminding himself not to be greedy. Dion picked up a wooden sword and began his training, realizing that if he wanted his family to acknowledge him, he needed to become stronger. He resolved to train for an additional 30 minutes that day, determined to improve himself. As the sunlight faded and night fell upon the Hart estate, Dion continued his intense training with determination. He felt that he had to keep pushing himself, telling himself that he needed to do more, just a little more. However, Cruel intervened, holding Dion's wooden sword and noticing that Dion's nose was bleeding. Filled with anger, Cruel demanded to know what Dion was doing. Dion stammered, explaining that he only wanted to train to become stronger. Cruel's anger flared, and he sternly reminded Dion that he had explicitly instructed him not to do anything and to remain quietly in his room. Dion nodded obediently, but in his thoughts, he questioned whether he should do nothing at all, feeling like a failure. With a faint, Joker-like smile, Dion asked Cruel to leave his room, saying that he wouldn't do anything, as nobody expected anything from him. Cruel left the room, leaving Dion to contemplate what he needed to do to be loved within the Hart family. A servant knocked on Dion's door, inquiring whether young Master Dion would be dining in his room as usual. Dion asked about the whereabouts of the others, referring to his parents. He was now 14 years old. The servant clarified that Dion's parents were out attending to urgent matters. Cruel then entered the room and informed Dion that he had finished his training in the morning, inviting Dion to play chess with him. Dion thought about how, after he had given up trying, his brother Cruel occasionally came to play chess with him. He realized that he didn't see much of his parents. Dion agreed to play chess and, when Cruel asked if he had interrupted Dion while he was busy, Dion replied that he wasn't busy at all. Cruel mentioned that their parents were busy due to the chaos in the nation. He acknowledged that he was aware it was a lie but found himself clinging to the hope that it might be true. Dion couldn't help but think that the reason for their absence might be because they didn't want to see him. In the midst of his thoughts, Cruel revealed that he wouldn't be able to come and play chess with Dion for a while. Dion apologized, feeling guilty for thinking that Cruel might have found it cumbersome to visit him. Cruel clarified that it wasn't about being cumbersome, but rather because of an impending war. He mentioned that at least one member of their family would be conscripted. However, before Cruel could finish his sentence, an unexpected visitor entered Dion's room. Cruel immediately demanded to know who the intruder was and how they dared to enter. The newcomer explained that they had come to deliver a message from the Empire and asked which one of them was Deon Hart. Dion stared at the man, filled with curiosity and a sense of foreboding. The man who had entered Dion's room forcibly grabbed his arm and insisted that they would discuss the details on the way. Outside the room, the soldiers continued to gossip about Dion. They expressed doubts about whether Dion, who looked scrawny, could even wield a sword. One of the soldiers speculated that the Hart family was trying to get rid of him on the battlefield. Cruel intervened, questioning the man who wanted to take Dion away. He asserted that Dion couldn't possibly be the subject of conscription and suggested there might be a mistake. The man responded by explaining that the Hart family had filed an official document with the royal family, and they were merely fulfilling their duties. He advised Cruel to check with Dion's parents to clarify the situation. Despite Cruel's objections, the soldiers forcibly dragged Dion out of his room. Dion couldn't make sense of the situation and was left bewildered and distraught. He wondered if his parents had decided to send him to war, despite his weakness. The idea of participating in the war and facing potential death filled him with dread, and he couldn't comprehend why his family would subject him to this fate. He looked back for his brother but found no one there, which brought tears to his eyes as he felt abandoned and unloved. The scene shifted to a weapon room on the battlefield, where Dion was given a sword. The soldier informed him that he would be sent to the front lines soon and advised him to become stronger if he didn't want to die. As Dion held the heavy sword, the soldiers nearby continued to gossip about him, commenting on his status as a renowned family son and speculating about his ability to handle a sword. They believed he was likely to die soon due to his apparent lack of skill and strength. Dion couldn't bear the thought of dying in such a horrific place, and his fear intensified as he entered the battlefield. The chaos of endless fighting, screams, and the overwhelming stench of blood surrounded him. Tragically, a fellow soldier died, and Dion found himself pinned underneath the fallen comrade, struggling to escape the heavy weight on top of him. In his desperate mind, he kept repeating, "I don't want to die in a place like this." In the midst of the battlefield, an enemy suddenly appeared in front of Dion, and a fellow soldier protected him. The soldier yelled at him, urging him to stop thinking negatively and to fight for his survival. He emphasized that Dion should pick up any weapon available, even if he couldn't handle a sword, and use it to stay alive. The soldier's words ignited a fire within Dion, and he realized that he couldn't die in this place. A dagger dropped in front of Dion, and he grasped it tightly. Determined to survive, he channeled his anger and focused on the single word, kill. With the dagger in hand, he began to eliminate the enemy soldiers, instilling fear in them and paralyzing them with terror. Dion grew up in the battlefield. While fighting, Dion couldn't help but think about going home. He desperately wanted to return, but knew that survival was his immediate priority. An enemy attacked from the side, and Dion swiftly countered the assault, ultimately killing the enemy. As he stood over the fallen foe, he questioned whether home was a happy place. The scene shifted to the Empire's camp, where a soldier excitedly announced the arrival of gifts from loved ones. Dion observed the joy and gratitude of his fellow soldiers as they received letters and tokens from their families. However, there were no gifts under Dion's name, only a letter appointing him as a commander on the front lines. It was at this moment that Dion made up his mind to ensure that the Hart family, which had sent him to this hellish place, would also suffer a similar fate. The scene then shifted to the Hart estate, where the door was open, and a guard had been killed by a man. Shockingly, that man was Deon Hart himself. His parents, terrified, faced him as he pointed a dagger at them. Dion coldly greeted them and proceeded to attack his own father, stabbing him in the chest. His father coughed up blood, and his wife rushed to his side. Standing over them, Dion raised his dagger and killed his own mother. In his mind, he believed that he had finally achieved the dream he had yearned for over the years. Dion found himself in a chaotic and nightmarish scenario, confronting his own parents with a knife in his hand. He lashed out at them, expressing his anger and pain at the way he had been treated and the love he had never received. However, his tirade was interrupted when his brother Cruel arrived on the scene. Dion was in a state of distress, pleading for his brother's help. A sinister voice echoed in Dion's mind, casting doubt on Cruel's intentions. Dion and Cruel engaged in a deadly confrontation, with Dion trying to defend himself with his dagger. Dion accused Cruel of being a bystander who had abandoned him in his time of need, and he was consumed by a desire to end his own suffering. As the dagger tumbled into his grasp, he found himself kneeling and pondered, "Have I pushed my physical capabilities to the extreme? This frail body of mine. I cannot succumb to unconsciousness at this moment. I am determined to defeat Cruel." Just then, Cruel swiftly emerged, wielding a sword and preparing to strike with a powerful overhead slash. As the scene shifted back to reality, Dion found himself in the royal banquet hall, where Liane Rayner, the lofty knight's commander, called out to him. Dion was initially relieved to see someone normal among the people he had encountered, but quickly realized that something was amiss. He had no memory of how he had arrived at the royal palace or changed his attire. His last memory was the carriage was ambushed. Dion tried to piece together the events, but his memory was fragmented and disjointed. He couldn't recall seeing the emperor or receiving any news. Liane explained that the banquet was being held to celebrate the birth and debut of the new hero, Cruel Heart. Cruel greeted Dion, and Dion couldn't help but feel that his bad dream held some significance in his current situation.
Dion exchanged greetings with his brother and glanced up to see familiar features, a pair of green eyes and dark hair, that characterized the Hart family. It was an unexpected encounter for Dion, as he hadn't anticipated seeing them again, especially not someone he didn't want to meet, Cruel. Cruel mentioned their previous expedition and how he had encountered the leader of the demon army's Zero Squad. Cruel acknowledged Dion's reputed command on the battlefield and suggested they should join forces. However, Dion found the idea absurd and laughed it off, stating that he had no reason to fight alongside Cruel. Cruel understood Dion's perspective, and Dion reflected on the unchanged indifference in his brother's eyes. Rather than engaging in conversation with Cruel, Dion considered indulging in pudding. Nevertheless, Dion suggested that his brother should attend to the guests of honor while he found something else to do. Cruel remained present and inquired about Dion's recent monster-killing mission, asking if Dion had sustained any injuries. Dion reassured him, claiming that he could take care of himself but expressed skepticism about Cruel's genuine concern. Dion harbored resentment towards his brother, recalling how Cruel had neglected to aid him during their past experiences. Duke Illister Stray, a prominent figure opposing the emperor, interrupted their conversation, remarking on the apparent bond between the brothers. Cruel greeted the Duke with a bow, while the Duke dismissed the formality and turned his attention to Dion. The Duke mentioned that it was their first meeting and expressed pleasure in making Dion's acquaintance. Dion, puzzled by the sudden attention from the Duke, averted his gaze and ignored the extended hand for a handshake. Onlookers were taken aback by Dion's behavior, gossiping about his expectedly unconventional actions, given his status as an honorary earl. Unbeknownst to others, Dion's odd conduct was due to having pudding in his mouth, rendering him unable to respond. He tried to chew and swallow it discreetly while contemplating the Duke's imminent eruption of anger. Dion decided to remain silent for the time being and merely shook the Duke's hand. However, the Crown Prince Dessert approached them, greeting the Duke and acknowledging his absence from the palace. Dion, still chewing the pudding, questioned why everyone had congregated around him when they should have been paying their respects to the Crown Prince. He hastened to finish chewing the pudding, eager to join the ongoing conversation and wondering why they acted as if the banquet hall was too small for them to talk elsewhere. The Crown Prince expressed that there was no need for the Duke to apologize, but he did so anyway, recognizing that it was presumptuous to expect the Duke to visit him first due to the Duke's numerous obligations. However, the Crown Prince found it peculiar that the cunning Earl Hartright was lingering around after his mission. Determined to take action, the Crown Prince decided to protect Earl Hart and wondered why he was unaware of the intrigues and secret struggles surrounding the Emperor, as well as the existence of both enemies and defenders. Suddenly, a voice shouted, "Count!" from behind, and someone embraced Dion tightly from the back. It turned out to be Princess Althea Desert, who, while hugging Dion, expressed her disappointment that the Crown Prince hadn't informed her of his meeting with the Count. The princess gazed at Dion affectionately and confessed how much she missed him. Overwhelmed by the situation, Dion fell to his knees, causing a red substance to spill from his mouth onto the floor. Startled, the Crown Prince called for the Imperial healer urgently, assuming it was blood. However, they were mistaken. It was actually pudding. Despite Dion's attempts to assure everyone that he was fine, no one believed him. Even Liane blamed herself for not noticing his condition. At that moment, the Emperor, accompanied by General Nessius, the first hero of the Empire, entered the hall and inquired about the commotion. The princess claimed that Earl Hart was bleeding due to her embrace, expressing regret, but the Emperor dismissed the idea, stating that the Count was a hero who couldn't vomit blood because of a hug. The Emperor suggested that the Count might have suffered an internal injury from an ambush on the way to the palace. He offered to summon an Imperial healer, but Dion declined, insisting he was fine. Confused as to why no one was listening to him, Dion realized that the strong scent of perfumes in the banquet hall masked the true nature of his condition. The Emperor concluded that if Dion refused the healer because of the Demon King's curse, even the Emperor's healer wouldn't be able to help. Hearing this, Dion contemplated pretending to feel unwell and returning home, especially since he had already achieved his goals and met with the Emperor. Suddenly, he felt dizzy and began to fall, but someone's hand steadied him. He thanked the person, only to discover it was his brother. Dion glared at his brother and expressed his lack of need for Cruel's assistance, questioning why his older brother was displaying kindness today. Cruel, who had been the target of Dion's deep hatred during the 8-Year War, now dared to feign concern. The Emperor advised Dion to go home if he wasn't feeling well, and Dion apologized before leaving the hall with a sigh of relief. Cruel, the elder brother, watched him depart with a sense of sadness. Duke Stray and Cruel Hart left the banquet together, and the Duke expressed indignation at the Emperor's tolerance towards Deon Hart. The Duke believed that the Earl's disrespectful behavior towards the guest of honor, organized by the Imperial family, should have been punished, but the Emperor justified it by stating that the Earl was feeling unwell. Cruel faced criticism for displaying excessive kindness towards his brother. Cruel explained that he only wanted to maintain a pleasant atmosphere in the presence of the banquet's guest of honor. However, the Duke argued that Cruel's true intentions were known to him. In the past, Cruel had approached the Duke seeking sponsorship. He promised to become the Duke's most skilled swordsman if the Duke supported him. The Duke, aware of the history between Cruel and his younger brother, viewed Cruel's request with suspicion. He believed that Cruel, who had suffered the loss of his entire family at the hands of his brother, could have chosen various paths for survival. Nonetheless, Cruel approached the Duke, and the Duke, recognizing Cruel's loyalty, agreed to sponsor him. Despite granting his support, the Duke remained curious about Cruel's true motives. In a conversation, the Duke recalled their previous discussion, where he had pondered whom Cruel sought to protect. Finally, the Duke realized that Cruel's aim was to protect himself from Deon Hart. Cruel affirmed the Duke's intuition. Duke Illister Stray expressed satisfaction with this revelation, stating that their goals were aligning. He believed that Deon Hart, the Emperor's loyal subordinate, needed to be eliminated. While Deon's loyalty to the Emperor was not the sole reason for his elimination, Illister Stray argued that Deon posed the greatest threat to the Empire and had to be assassinated at any cost. After returning home with Leanne, Deon sensed the smell of smoke. To his surprise, he discovered his house engulfed in flames, with some unidentified individuals standing outside. Confused, Deon questioned why they were there and what was happening. He initially suspected it to be a figment of his imagination due to stress, but the heat and smell confirmed it was real. Frustrated, Deon shouted in anger, demanding to know what was going on, expressing his discontent that his home was not a place for chaotic individuals. In the midst of the chaos, an object was thrown towards Deon, who caught it and hastily threw it away. The bomb exploded, but no one seemed to be injured. A bloodied man emerged from the smoke and praised Deon for his quick reaction, deeming him a true hero for throwing back the bomb that had been launched as a surprise attack. This surprised everyone, including Deon, as he hadn't actually seen the assailant but had instinctively thrown the bomb away out of fear. However, he noticed the sleeve patch worn by the Revolutionary Army and was astonished that they had already reached his house. Deon's knights informed him that the revolutionaries had targeted his house with the bomb, but they swiftly dealt with them. Realizing that the higher-ranked knights must have joined forces with the official knights of the Empire, Deon turned to his squad and glared at them, questioning if they had been expelled due to their disruptive behavior. However, to everyone's surprise, the squad suddenly began hugging Deon and expressing their joy that their captain cared about them. They assured him that if they were causing any trouble, they hadn't been expelled. Leanne, who had saved Deon, scolded the knights for displaying such behavior towards the Count. Deon was grateful to Leanne for diverting the attention from him and thought that the Revolutionary Army clearly intended to harm him, although he couldn't fathom what he had done to provoke them. In the midst of the chaos, Deon noticed 2 survivors attempting to escape. Realizing that he needed information about the Revolutionary Army, he knew he had to capture at least one of them alive. Suddenly, a shadow swiftly intervened, striking the 2 survivors forcefully. It was Remember, and Deon realized that this man was no ordinary butler. Remember greeted Dion and expressed his delight that Dion had believed himself to be in mortal danger but had successfully thrown back the bomb at his attacker. Remember then inquired if something had happened at the Imperial Palace, noting Dion's tired appearance, even though it had only been half a day since they last saw each other. Dion began to respond, intending to say that nothing was wrong, but Leanne interrupted and informed Remember about the ambush they encountered on their way to the palace. She mentioned the possibility of Dion having internal injuries worsened by fatigue. In response, Remember suggested that the Count should rest while he took care of everything. Remember outlined the plan to destroy the Emperor, emphasizing the need to deal with 3 key individuals first. The first was General Nessius, the supreme commander of the 8-year war in the Emperor's personal guard. The second was Chancellor L, known for his skillful policies and financial management that kept the population calm. The third was Deon Hart, the commander of the vanguard in the 8-year war and the Emperor's loyal subordinate who operated covertly, making his presence unpredictable and difficult to track. Remember gazed at Dion, acknowledging the challenge posed by his role. In a passionate outburst, the revolutionary declared that despite their failure, the revolutionary army would not give up and would kill the Emperor's dog, referring to Dion. However, the knights did not appreciate this proclamation. One of the knights, unable to tolerate it, seized the revolutionary and rebuked him, stating that since the beginning of the 8-year war, they had never fought for the Emperor but solely for Deon Hart. The knight swiftly struck down the revolutionary. Remember, who had witnessed the scene, understood that more lives would have to be taken, but now they had to report that no prisoners were left alive. Everyone has a hard life in the city slums, but homeless children. In the city slums, where life was particularly harsh, a little girl sat on a dirty street near a wall, desperately hungry. She attempted to scrounge for food but was caught and beaten. She was on the brink of starvation, and in the slums where people frequently died, her impending death wouldn't surprise anyone. She wondered if anyone would mourn her passing at all. Suddenly, footsteps approached, and someone remarked that she was nearly dead. It was a boy named Paul, who stated that there was nothing more to be done and that he would offer her a bun. The girl was astonished that he had managed to obtain bread and asked where he had gotten it. The boy replied that it was from the Church of the Atonement, leaving the girl greatly surprised. Paul explained that people from the Church of the Atonement visited the slum and provided free bread and water to the residents. The girl found it hard to believe that someone would give things away for free, suspecting that there might be something hidden in the bread. However, Paul disagreed and told her that their neighbor had eaten the bread without any issues. The girl argued that the neighbor would eat anything if it was free, but Paul insisted that he was telling the truth and expressed his concern for her well-being since she hadn't eaten for a week. The girl expressed surprise that the Church of the Atonement, which wasn't affiliated with a religion and required a fee to be part of their congregation, would do something like this. She doubted that they genuinely provided water and bread without any ulterior motives. This angered Paul, who told her that she could choose not to believe and that he would go to the Church of the Atonement himself and do as he pleased, even if it meant throwing away the bread. Upon hearing Paul's words, the girl called out to him and said she would go with him. However, she believed that it didn't matter if the bread and water were poisoned, or if she starved or died from consuming them. She believed that whether they brought salvation or damnation, it didn't make a difference. Meanwhile, Dion had returned to the Empire a week ago, and the estate that had been on fire was almost cleaned up. His knights, who had returned unexpectedly, were given their own residence. However, Dion found himself with a lot of tasks to handle at home, including a suggestion to build another dam on the territory of the Hart family. He questioned the butler, Remember, about who dared to propose such an idea, but Remember calmly informed Dion that he was the one who suggested it. Dion rapidly changed his mind, approving the suggestion and considering it a good idea. Dion realized that he couldn't take Remember's presence lightly, as the butler had potentially saved him from unknown dangers by bringing the documents. Suddenly, shouts and commotion were heard outside the window, and Dion discovered that his knights were fighting with the higher-ranking knights. He acknowledged that conflicts were expected, as the knights of the manor and the higher-ranking knights had a long-standing history of animosity. Remember explained that the Emperor had sent the high-ranking knights on missions previously, but now they were under the Earl's command, waiting for new missions and training. Dion asked Remember why the Emperor had returned the knights to him, expressing surprise and a longing for the demon realm, where he had more freedom. Remember suggested that the Emperor returned the high-ranking knights because he was concerned about the Count's well-being. that it was a standard practice to return family knights, even if they had become Imperial knights, to avoid treason. Remember argued that the Emperor wouldn't have returned the Earl's troops if he didn't believe in Dion's loyalty. Dion considered Remember's perspective and wondered if the Emperor simply couldn't get along with the high-ranking knights, who were known as Earl Hart's mad dogs for a reason. However, his immediate concern was the mounting number of overdue cases that hadn't been addressed since he left on his mission. He realized that he needed to take action regarding the management of the Hart estate, which he had handed over to the Emperor before his departure. Dion felt a sense of resentment towards the Emperor for expressing concern about him while still holding ownership of the lands. The butler, observing Dion's reaction, revealed that the Emperor had actually transferred ownership of the lands back to Dion. This news came as a surprise to Dion, who hadn't been aware of the transfer. Remember mentioned that the official document confirming the transfer was somewhere in the room. However, Dion was upset by this development and resolved to find a way to return the estate to the Emperor. Dion berated himself for not resisting when he was given the title of Count under the pretext of protecting the Empire's borders. He admitted that although the Hart estate was located on the border between countries, he had never truly desired it due to the negative memories associated with it. Determined to address the situation, Dion decided that he needed to visit the Emperor and discuss the matter. However, their conversation was interrupted by the news of the arrival of the Crown Prince and General Nemes, catching Dion off guard. Dion was taken aback by the unexpected guests, particularly because General Nemes held a strong dislike towards him. As the guests entered the manor, General Nemes noticed a large family portrait and assumed that Dion had moved it to the new manor. They were then escorted to the Earl's study, where the Crown Prince apologized for the unannounced visit but expressed the need for a conversation. During breakfast, the Crown Prince had mentioned that the Honorable Earl Hart had successfully captured the revolutionary army that had ambushed him on the estate. However, Princess Alia felt sad and reflected on the events that had unfolded at the banquet. Observing her sister's melancholy expression, the Crown Prince inquired about her well-being. Alia covered her face with her hands and confessed that she believed Count Hart no longer wanted to see her, rendering all her efforts in vain. The Crown Prince reassured Alia, stating that he didn't view her efforts in a serious light. However, Alia suddenly stood up and demanded that her brother acknowledge her beauty and princess status, even though she had never used her charms to manipulate anyone. She insisted that, as a young girl, she had the right to be inexperienced in romantic affairs. Alia continued to worry, expressing her desire to avoid causing further trouble to Count Hart, who had even experienced physical distress as a result of the events. Crown Prince Eduardo clarified that he had repeatedly stated that the Count's condition wasn't caused by Alia's actions, despite her clinging to him. Alia expressed her intention to apologize to the Count in person and insisted on seeing him. However, Eduardo firmly refused, explaining that whether she went to him or summoned him to her would create a scandal. Alia suggested that a scandal could be advantageous and that she would use it as an opportunity to marry the Count. Eduardo sternly urged her to stop, pretending to him that she didn't love Count Hart and that her affections were merely a facade. Alia countered by stating that even if she didn't love him, she could marry him for the sake of the Imperial family. The Crown Prince expressed that if Princess Alia revealed her logical thinking and abandoned her scheming, he would gladly support her. However, he warned her that presenting herself as a foolish princess would raise suspicion. Nonetheless, Alia insisted that everything was fine and that she and the Earl should be together. She mentioned that the nobles were already discussing the succession to the throne and that their plan involving Hart was still in motion. Alia claimed that she had already expressed her feelings for him, and everyone was aware of it. She believed that no one would dare to challenge the Earl, and if they could align such talent with the Imperial family, the Empire would become stronger. Surprisingly, the Crown Prince affectionately stroked Alia's head and acknowledged her good intuition. He reiterated that she had the power to halt the plan at any time. Alia smiled at her brother and requested that he find out what Count Hart thought of her, as it would be detrimental if the favorite of the Emperor was upset about the incident at the banquet. In the Count's office, the Crown Prince pondered their purpose for being there. He realized that they were not only investigating if Alia's behavior had upset the Count but also attempting to compel him to serve the Emperor. Dion, observing the guests, couldn't comprehend why they had come to him. Count Hart greeted the dignitaries, and the Crown Prince apologized for the unexpected visit, stating that they needed to talk. Dion inquired about the purpose of their visit, and Oppius expressed his desire to discuss something with him. The general mentioned that he also had some business to attend to. Recognizing the intense animosity from General Nemesius, Dion was surprised by the depth of the general's hatred towards him. The crown prince began by apologizing for the princess's behavior at the banquet, acknowledging her rudeness. Noting that she had been seriously reprimanded by the crown prince, ensuring that such behavior would not recur for a while. Dion, however, dismissed the incident, stating that nothing serious had occurred at the banquet, and there was no need for an apology. The crown prince was relieved to hear that the count was not angry with them for the incident. Dion marveled at his own astonishment but recognized that it was not the first time the princess had behaved that way, understanding it as a display of affection. He considered it foolish to be angry over it. However, the crown prince had more to discuss. He requested a favor, causing Dion to grow increasingly nervous. Surprised him by asking if they could be friends. The crown prince expressed his desire to establish a closer relationship but acknowledged the count's busy schedule, which resulted in their infrequent encounters. Dion was taken aback, questioning whether he had traveled all this way just to make such a request. Explained that the constraints of being the crown prince prevented him from freely visiting the person he wished to build relations with. Thus, he used the pretext of apologizing for his sister's behavior as a means to approach Dion. He concluded by asking if such an offer seemed too awkward for the count. Dion considered the question peculiar. How could he accept such a preposterous offer? He began to express his indignation, but upon seeing the way the general looked at him, he realized he couldn't refuse. Dion openly expressed his honor in becoming friends with His Highness the Crown Prince, but he couldn't help but notice the intense gaze of General Nemesius, who seemed prepared to harm him if he refused. The Crown Prince was pleased with Dion's response and declared that they would be friends from that day forward, committing to do everything in his power to strengthen their bond. Dion reluctantly agreed to this arrangement, expressing her happiness in being friends with someone highly regarded by the emperor. Dion, wearing a sad expression, acknowledged his honor in return. The Crown Prince recognized the immense pressure on Dion but was delighted that he did not refuse, proving his good-hearted nature against the rumors. The Crown Prince looked forward to their camaraderie, urged Dion to visit the Imperial Palace whenever he was there, suggesting they could spar, drink tea, and discuss life. While Dion attempted to respond, the Crown Prince bid farewell, stating that there was no need for him to see them off. Dion still needed to speak with the general, and the Crown Prince anticipated their next meeting. With that, the Crown Prince departed, leaving Dion alone with General Nemesius. Once the Crown Prince left, the general informed Dion that the emperor desired him to hand over a soldier from the revolutionary army. The soldier's identity and information on the rebel army's bases were of interest. As Dion was the one who captured the soldier, he had the right to refuse. Dion was relieved that the general got straight to the point and had no desire to engage with someone who harbored such hatred towards him. He affirmed aloud that he would hand over the prisoner. They descended into the underground prison, where the bound prisoner was presented by a knight. Dion informed the general that he could take the prisoner immediately. The general regarded Dion with suspicion and mentioned that according to the report, the ambush involved 3 men. One died in an explosion, one was captured, but the cause of death for the second prisoner was not explained. Dion inquired about the general's meaning, and the general directly asked if he knew how the man died. The general believed that he didn't despise people without reason and had observed Dion up close during the 8-year war, uncovering the truth about Deon Hart and his sudden change in personality. It was during Dion's time as a private soldier when a weak child was assigned to his squad, someone who resorted to cruelty for survival and eventually descended into insanity to avoid death. One day, General Nemesius entered the child's tent and conveyed that while no one would blame him for the chosen path of survival, he would have to accept the guilt for his actions. The child suffered from guilt after each battle, but the general realized that the guilt had split the child's personality into 2, with one persona activated during bloody and brutal battles, guided solely by the instinct to survive. The other persona participated in ordinary battles and retained only those memories, while the child justified the absence of memories from the bloody battles as a trick of the mind. Dion was relieved that he managed to survive without engaging in further violence. The general held a deep disdain for Dion, believing that he had abandoned his humanity by adopting an extreme approach to survival and suppressing the inherent guilt within every person. The general questioned how long Dion could continue deceiving himself and ignoring his own actions. When asked about the death of the second prisoner, Dion admitted that he wasn't present at the scene and could only recount what he had been told, which was that the prisoner had been torn apart by wild dogs. The general accepted this explanation but remained skeptical, suspecting that Dion had taken advantage of the unstable nature of the commit the murder while leaving no memories of the act. The general found Dion to be a truly dangerous man due to his weaknesses and the burden of responsibility he carried. Consequently, the general couldn't understand why the emperor kept such a dangerous and unstable individual in his presence. After the guests departed, Dion returned to his office and unintentionally fell asleep in his chair. He was awakened by Remember, who had been waiting in the shadows. Remember inquired about Dion's well-being and mentioned that the doctor had been called to examine him while he slept. The doctor attributed Dion's unconsciousness to fatigue and stress, which Dion was already aware of due to his fluctuating blood pressure. Remember proposed sending the High Knights on a monster-taming expedition to alleviate some of Dion's stress. Dion liked the idea, as it would keep the Knights occupied and prevent them from causing trouble. Remember had already considered the details and suggested a nearby monster nest as the target for the expedition. Dion agreed and instructed Remember to send the Knights to deal with the nest as soon as possible. Dion hoped that once the troublesome creatures were dealt with, he would finally be able to find peace and rest. However, his expectations were disrupted when a group of men, including Lean, approached the border of his domain. Dion questioned why he was being brought along, and one of his knights explained that they thought it would be more enjoyable for him to be on a mission rather than sitting idle at home. They believed he missed the thrill of battle and bloodshed. Dion believed that it was for the best not to witness bloodshed, and he couldn't understand why the knight was spouting such nonsensical ideas. He initially wanted to decline the trip, but he found himself unable to do so when he was strongly urged to join the mission by the squad. One knight even fell to his knees and tearfully begged Dion to come along, emphasizing that he was an integral part of the High Knights and that they couldn't embark on the journey without him. Dion had no desire to participate in such a dangerous mission and certainly didn't find pleasure in exterminating monsters at the Empire's borders. He expressed his inability to join the mission, stating that he needed to attend to the documents. However, the butler intervened and assured Dion that he would handle the business himself, allowing Dion to go on the trip. The High Knights were deeply concerned for their commander and believed that he was suffering from boredom in their absence. They firmly believed that only they could rescue him from the doldrums. When they learned that the butler was supportive of their cause, their pleas for Dion to accompany them intensified. Remember suggested that the Earl should join the mission, as it would be safer for him to be away since assassins might try to target him on the Hart estate. Remember also mentioned his intention to apprehend the person behind the assassination attempts while Dion was on the mission. Dion recalled this conversation and concluded that he couldn't refuse to join the High Knights on the mission, considering that he had miraculously survived 2 assassination attempts. It was imperative to capture the mastermind behind the attempts before the next one succeeded. One of the knights reassured Dion that there was no need to feel hesitant in their presence, as they had already heard that he had recently embarked on a solo expedition to slay monsters and returned with a smile on his face. However, they were unaware that it was merely a cover story, and Dion had actually been resting comfortably in the Demon King's castle. The knight added that Dion would also have fun this time as the monsters were already in the vicinity, allowing him to relish in battle. The High Knights eagerly launched their attack on the monsters, and Dion couldn't help but feel that these individuals were more terrifying than the demons in the demon realm. He even found himself longing for the comfort he experienced there. Lean, who had been beside Dion, let out a heavy sigh, suggesting that she was exhausted from dealing with the unruly behavior of her subordinates when they had nothing to do. Dion had requested someone capable of controlling the bloodthirsty High Knights from the Emperor, and Lean Reiner had been personally recommended by him. Lean set the standard for knights and possessed incredible skills herself, unlike the chaotic High Knights. Dion felt ashamed that Lean had to handle such lunatics because of him. However, his thoughts were interrupted when Lean asked him if he wanted to participate in the battle. Dion responded by saying that they should enjoy themselves now to minimize future trouble. The girl interpreted his words as tactful, although in reality, Dion simply wanted them to eliminate everyone so that he wouldn't have to actively participate. Nonetheless, his squad, known as the Mad Dogs, often engaged in arguments during battles, debating who killed the monsters first or who claimed the most opponents. Dion also didn't escape notice, and one of the knights questioned why he was observing instead of engaging in the monster fight. Dion responded by stating that he would decide when to join the battle, but in truth, he had no intention of participating at all. He had a nagging feeling that something terrible would occur if he did get involved. Suddenly, he sensed danger and swiftly turned around, only to be struck by an arrow in his shoulder. Lin rushed to his aid, expressing concern for his well-being. Dion pondered feverishly about who could have attacked him, ruling out the possibility of it being from another country since nobody wanted to wage war against the Empire. Thus, he deduced that it was yet another assassination attempt orchestrated by someone within the Empire itself. His suspicions were confirmed when masked men emerged from the forest. One of them expressed annoyance that Dion had evaded the arrow. In anger, Dion swore and asked Lin to cut the arrow as short as possible, allowing him to move more freely without obstruction. The girl cautioned that doing so would cause him more pain during the extraction of the arrowhead. However, upon seeing Dion's determined expression, she realized that arguing was futile. The arrowhead would gradually penetrate deeper, causing increasing agony, but dealing with it could wait. For the time being, there was an enemy to confront, leaving no opportunity for arrow removal. Assessing the situation, Dion instructed his mad dogs to prepare the drug. Two men were observing the scene, with one suggesting that the wounded individual resembled the third hero of Empire, Deon Hart. The second man concurred, noting Dion's blonde hair and the presence of bloodthirsty ghost knights, leading him to believe it was indeed Deon Hart. However, the first man became distracted and inquired about the ongoing conflict within the Empire. He had been aware of the squad tasked with exterminating monsters, but now it seemed an internal strife was unfolding, and the Empire's hero had sustained a non-healing wound. The realization struck him that only 2 years had passed since the conclusion of the 8-Year War, and the renowned hero Deon Hart was already injured. It was unlikely that the Empire desired another war. Consequently, if they accused the assailants of attacking their kingdom, they could demand substantial reparations. During this time, Dion swallowed a couple of pills, which noticeably improved his mood. Lin questioned the nature of the pills, and Dion explained that they temporarily suppressed common sense. This revelation horrified Lin, who asked if the pills were illegal. Dion reassured her that their usage was simply unnecessary to disclose. The leader of the assassins gave the order to attack and eliminate Dion. However, the pills had already taken effect, and Dion launched his own counterattack. With remarkable speed, he leapt from his horse and subdued the nearest enemy without delivering a lethal blow. Looking ahead, Dion remarked that since he had captured one alive, he could dispatch the rest. One of the assassins cursed and attempted to strike, but Dion outmaneuvered him. Rising to his feet, he instructed Lin to ensure the immobilized assassin remained alive. He turned to his squad and inquired about their actions. The High Knights were perplexed by the question and stared at Dion in confusion. Dion killed another enemy and explained that on the battlefield, they were no longer High Knights but mad dogs. It seemed that they had begun to ponder whether they should display generosity, but Dion clarified that they needed to discard such notions. He questioned why they hadn't taken the pills yet, emphasizing that they needed to be ruthless in battle if they wanted to survive. He instructed them to abandon their conscience and only retain the ability to distinguish friend from foe, brutally eliminating anyone who threatened their lives. Dion warned that they wouldn't survive in this world unless they allowed madness to consume them completely, all in the name of survival. The leader of the assassins cursed and realized that their greed had led them to choose the wrong opponent. However, the financial offer was enticing, and they couldn't refuse. The assassin, addressing Cruel Heart, asked if everything was going according to plan. Initially, the Duke had ordered them to kill Deon Hart, but Cruel had added a small clause to the mission, promising them half the reward even if they only wounded the target. The assassin worried about the consequences if the Duke found out, but Cruel assured him that he would take full responsibility. The assassin observed the new hero of the Empire and speculated that Cruel must harbor a strong disdain for Deon Hart. However, Cruel's actions often puzzled him, leaving his true intentions unclear. This brutal battle was filled with swearing, shouting, and dirty tactics, instilling fear in those witnessing it. The man at the center of the chaos had eyes that gleamed as he tore his enemies apart, resembling a bloodthirsty ghost. One dying individual was shocked that this man was hailed as a hero of the Empire. They believed they should never have gotten involved in the confrontation between the Empire's high-ranking individuals. How could one remain sane after encountering such violent psychopaths? It was no wonder they were called Deadly Ghost Knights instead of High Knights. These Ghost Knights appeared more like demons than humans. Dion approached the dying man and remarked that he didn't know if they had been blinded by greed or simply foolish, but it had led them all to their deaths. However, the assassin still had a choice to make before meeting his own demise. Dion stated that he didn't particularly enjoy torturing people, but he needed to extract the information about who was behind the assassination attempt. Emperor Eduardo Desert was organizing matters in his office when his chancellor informed him of a complaint from the Kingdom of Ireland. The emperor was taken aback, but the chancellor continued, explaining that the esteemed Earl Deon Hart had been occupied with slaying monsters near their borders. The kingdom contended that the battle they had engaged in, as a result of the ambush near the castle walls, constituted an attempted armed invasion. The emperor's first concern was the well-being of Earl Hart. The chancellor replied that the earl had been shot in the left shoulder with an arrow, rendering his arm unusable for about a month. The emperor smiled faintly and inquired about the Kingdom of Ireland's request for reparations, which confirmed his suspicion. The emperor believed that their decision not to go to war was influenced by Count Hart's injury, but he voiced aloud that he had remained silent for too long, allowing the neighboring kingdom to grow insolent. The chancellor began to speculate about the emperor's intentions and attempted to alter the course of events in advance. He proposed accusing the Kingdom of Elon of orchestrating an ambush to corner them. However, the emperor firmly rejected the idea and issued orders to prepare for war, much to the chancellor's horror. The chancellor pointed out that only 2 years had passed since the last war, but the emperor argued that it had been sufficient time for rest and recovery. The chancellor expressed concerns about the enormous expenses of war, but the emperor countered that they would gain wealth and resources through the process of conquering the Kingdom of Elon, as they had done during the previous 8-year war. The chancellor attempted to voice another objection, but the emperor anticipated him and declared that he was a tyrant who had always planned to conquer the entire continent. He believed that the current situation had worked out for the best. Observing the emperor, the chancellor thought that even if he desired to be a tyrant, he shouldn't neglect his duties. Ever since the emperor ascended the throne by killing his siblings, conquering the continent had been his ultimate goal. The emperor's sense of responsibility, driven by guilt, became a burden that caused disasters. While it was not wrong to be responsible, he prioritized his guilt for fratricide over the well-being of the empire's people, which was a misplaced order in the hierarchy. If disaster couldn't be avoided, the chancellor hoped that the empire would not suffer, and he would secretly work on the budget. The emperor realized that the chancellor had already started mentally calculating the financial aspects and stated that it was time for him to get to work as well. He turned to General Nemesius, who was standing nearby, and inquired if he had any information about the Church of Redemption. The general acknowledged having heard about it, mentioning that it was a cult gaining popularity in the slums. Considering the chaotic state of the country, it was not surprising that the impoverished turned to faith for solace. However, the emperor expressed his disapproval, stating that the Church of Redemption had become too powerful. Before the war commenced, any potential threat within the empire needed to be eliminated. The emperor decided to assign Deon Hart to handle this task, not as punishment for what had occurred on the border, but because the wounded earl couldn't be given a more demanding assignment at the moment. Nemesius reluctantly questioned if Deon Hart was the best choice, to which the emperor affirmed that dealing with a small group of fanatics would be the focus, and even with his injury, Count Hart should be capable of handling the job. Nemesius once again expressed his opposition to Earl Hart's candidacy, a sentiment that the emperor had always disregarded. However, this time, the emperor commented on the general's attitude towards the earl, noting that he clearly harbored a dislike for Deon Hart. The emperor asked if it was due to the earl's brutal approach to disarming enemies, but Nemesius stated that it wasn't the reason. He explained that the earl's cruelty was merely a survival mechanism, and Deon Hart had a divided personality. Nemesius spoke with hatred, describing the earl as having a fragile mental state akin to a sandcastle. He expressed concerns about what might happen if the earl's sanity were to collapse, suggesting that the walls he had built would crumble, leading to unpredictable consequences. The emperor interrupted, asking Nemesius about the meaning of crumble. Seeing the surprise on Nemesius's face, the emperor revealed that he had been aware of all this for a long time, which caught the general off guard even more. Nemesius couldn't understand why the emperor still trusted Deon Hart despite being aware of the earl's multiple personalities. In response, the emperor stated that Count Hart would have to make his own decisions, and any consequences that arose would be his responsibility. Indignantly, the general objected, drawing an analogy that if a sword breaks, it affects its owner, implying that the emperor would also bear responsibility for Deon Hart's actions. The emperor dismissed this as nonsense, asserting that it was the emperor's role to take responsibility for the actions of his subordinates. Nemesius attempted to speak again, but the emperor declared the subject closed. Eduardo acknowledged that although he had chosen the path of a tyrant, he could be a great ruler for those he valued. He forgave the general's current disrespect and emphasized the importance of not repeating such mistakes. The emperor understood Nemesius's fears but assured him that there were reasons for keeping someone as dangerous as Deon Hart close to him. One day, Deon Hart approached Eduardo and sought permission to exact revenge on his own family. Eduardo saw in him a clear sense of hatred, a murderous intent, and 8 years of accumulated rage towards his family, nurtured since he was sent to the front at the age of 14. When Deon Hart was finally recognized for his services, he appeared before the emperor seeking permission for his revenge. Eduardo believed that Deon Hart was feared by the nobles due to the way he had seized the throne, and thus, there was no reason to refuse him. However, he questioned whether Dion was valuable enough to allow the destruction of a respected family. Despite already deciding to use Dion as his weapon, Dion had asked what he had to do to earn permission. The emperor replied that the empire's hero was embarking on an expedition to slay the Demon King, and Dion had to accompany him. The outcome was astounding as Dion managed to retrieve the corpse of the fallen hero after the expedition. Eduardo asked Dion once again if he still intended to destroy his own family, to which Dion confirmed his intentions. The emperor believed that with such accomplishments, Dion should be acknowledged as a hero, even without possessing the hero fragment. After receiving permission to carry out his plan, Dion expressed gratitude to the emperor and departed for the Hart estate. However, things did not go as Dion had hoped. Late that night, Cruel Hart noticed that Deon Hart had killed the people of the county, but Cruel himself managed to survive in the end. Cruel Hart emerged as a trump card against Deon Hart, leading to Dion killing his own family. The only survivor was Cruel Hart, and in order to eliminate his brother, Dion still relied on the protection of the emperor. Cruel Hart now served Duke Illister Stray, and the two brothers found themselves in conflict. As long as Cruel Hart remained alive, Deon Hart would remain loyal to the emperor. Dion found himself surrounded by a pool of blood, with bloody, zombie-like people scattered around him. He felt scared and confused, hearing a whisper urging him to embrace madness for his own survival. Panicking, Dion clutched his head, unaware of what was happening. Suddenly, a hooded man closed his eyes and whispered for Dion to forget and ignore what had occurred. Dion woke up startled, relieved that it was only a dream. He wondered if he had been struck by an arrow from an assassin during his border expedition, while he was engaged in monster slaying. Upon returning to the Hart Manor, Dion was surprised to find that all the problems had been resolved while he was unconscious. He still remembered the strange dream, attributing it to the wound on his shoulder. Dion intended to ask the butler about a spy he had been searching for, but the butler was absent. Instead, the butler's assistant informed him that it was expected but unexpected that the spy turned out to be the butler. They needed to uncover the identity of the client who hired the spy. The spy, enraged, demanded to know who the butler, remember, was. The butler remained calm and unperturbed, knowing he could gather information from another source, a bird flying overhead. The assistant was instructed to follow the bird and uncover the spy's connections and the mastermind behind the attempts on Dion's life. Finally, Remember dismissed the dead spy by placing a termination paper on his corpse. Remember entered Dion's room, greeted him, and inquired about his well-being, having heard of his injury. Dion explained that the arrow had only grazed his left shoulder, not disrupting the routine of the manor. Dion was relieved that there was a pile of paperwork to attend to, providing an excuse to avoid further conversation. He noticed the scent of blood on Remember and asked if the butler was injured. Remember, taken aback by Dion's ability to smell blood, clarified that he had recently dealt with a spy, and the scent must have transferred to his suit. Remember expressed his initial intention to capture the spy alive but acknowledged that the spy's death was an accident, for which he apologized. Dion responded by stating that there was no need to apologize if the spy's death was unintentional. However, he was shocked to think that the butler had potentially found and killed the spy himself, which was unsettling since it was not a butler's typical role. Dion had always believed that Remember was just a butler from a small settlement in the central continent, but it seemed there was more to him than met the eye. Remember mentioned hearing about Dion's encounter with assassins during a mission and asked if Dion had discovered any information. Dion turned away slightly and admitted that he had been unable to identify the person who had ordered the attack, as all the assassins were now deceased. Even if the assassins had revealed something, Dion couldn't recall any details. After listening to Dion, the butler remarked that since both of them had failed to uncover anything, it indicated that the perpetrator was cunning and likely from a prominent family. Therefore, they needed to take the situation seriously. The butler narrowed down the circle of suspects to the Revolutionary Army, an enemy country, or Duke Illuster, the head of the nobility. However, the most probable suspect appeared to be Duke Illuster. Dealing with such a formidable adversary required assistance, so they should seek help from the emperor. Dion appreciated the butler's assistance and the wise counsel provided. Since Dion was already planning to visit the emperor to decline the Hart estate, he could also discuss the matter of Duke Illuster and request permission to retire and live a peaceful life. Upon arriving at the emperor's residence, the servants informed Dion that he would have to wait because the emperor was engaged in a private meeting with Duke Illuster. Dion had anticipated seeing the emperor immediately but now had to find something to occupy himself until the emperor became available. However, at that moment, he heard his name being called joyfully. It was the princess, who eagerly wanted to run up to Dion and hug him, but the crown prince restrained her. The crown prince apologized for his sister's behavior, and Dion respectfully greeted them as etiquette dictated. The crown prince insisted that formalities were unnecessary and declared that they were friends. He had overheard that Dion needed something to keep himself occupied before meeting the emperor, and the crown prince had an idea. They all ended up in a gazebo, seated at a table with tea. Dion expressed his gratitude for the opportunity to spend time with the princess and crown prince, but he regretted not knowing about the meeting beforehand and would have timed his arrival accordingly. The crown prince noticed that Dion frequently drank tea and suggested providing him with tea to take along. The princess chimed in, stating that tea should be accompanied by a cookie, and playfully placed a cookie in Dion's mouth. The crown prince mentioned hearing about Dion's injury during the monster attack and advised him to be cautious due to the curse weakening his body. He urged Dion to reconsider engaging in such outings against monsters and emphasized the importance of serving the emperor for a long time. However, Dion expressed his desire to be freed from his duties and live a life of personal pleasure. Unexpectedly, the crown prince confided that he didn't truly aspire to become emperor and asked if he should prepare to resign the moment the emperor stepped down. He added that he would only assume the throne in the unfortunate event of something happening to the emperor, whom he considered like a brother to himself and his sister, wishing him nothing but happiness. Dion believed he had an understanding of the deep respect the crown prince and his sister held for their uncle, the emperor. However, he preferred to remain oblivious to the intricate world of politics and power plays. The emperor's history of eliminating his siblings and their children made it challenging for Dion to comprehend the peaceful nature of the crown prince and princess. But there was a reason behind their relationship, and it stemmed from their father, the first prince. The first prince had treated young Eduardo well, even showing kindness to the ninth prince, who had no claim to the throne. The first prince had visited the ninth prince and his children, fostering a bond that extended beyond mere family ties. The crown prince expressed his concern for the emperor, who carried the weight of the empire alone, and requested that Dion take care of him. Listening to their conversation, Dion excused himself to use the restroom but left the garden instead. The crown prince and princess realized Dion had escaped, assuming the conversation had been too heavy for him. The crown prince lamented the discontent among the nobles, who had grown increasingly unhappy during the empire's calm period. These disgruntled nobles whispered their grievances towards the emperor, and it was uncertain when they would take action to provoke a response. Thus, the need to prepare and secure loyal allies who would stand unwaveringly by the emperor's side arose. The princess proposed a plan to marry Dion to unite their interests, emphasizing that her feelings were genuine. The crown prince agreed, hoping that Dion would become a loyal ally of the emperor. He expressed his desire for Dion to fulfill his duties to the emperor, even if it meant eliminating anyone, including the nobility, who stood in the way of serving the emperor unquestioningly. Dion roamed the palace in search of a restroom. As he typically left immediately after meeting with the emperor, he encountered a frightened young man exiting a room and called out to him. The young man, startled, brandished a dagger but failed to strike Dion. Instead, Dion evaded the attack and unintentionally caused the young man to stumble, dropping a stack of papers he held. The young man, fearing that Dion had discovered something, attempted to eliminate him as a witness. Despite numerous failed attempts, the criminal managed to successfully steal the correct document. Realizing that his chances of escaping were slim, he decided to strike at an unexpected moment. However, his plan was foiled by the intervention of the formidable Cruel, who seized the thief by the neck and lifted him off the ground. For a moment, their eyes locked, and it seemed as if they were on the verge of a violent confrontation. However, at that moment, the Duke of Illuster, who appeared out of nowhere, approached them. He picked up the document that had garnered everyone's interest and discreetly read its contents. The Duke then turned to Deon Hart and recounted his visit to the Emperor, expressing surprise at seeing the Earl present. The young man explained that he had also come to meet the ruler, hoping to persuade him to reclaim the estate and make a request. Observing that the brothers had captured the spot, the Duke inquired if this meant that the Emperor owed them a debt. Dion objected, clarifying that it wasn't entirely accurate. The Duke chuckled, displaying confidence that Dion would have managed on his own, even without his intervention. Suddenly, the Crown Prince and his sister appeared in the corridor, much to Dion's displeasure. They expressed concern over his prolonged absence and rushed towards him upon noticing his nosebleed, a sign of his body reacting to stress. Despite Dion's reassurances of his normal health, the agitated Crown Prince insisted on summoning a healer. Althea, in particular, displayed great distress. The Duke of Illuster suggested that Dion had been wounded while fighting the spy, speculating that the weapon might have been laced with poison. As the doctor hurried down the hallway, the prince pleaded with Dion to remain composed. The doctor, upon recognizing his patient, was also greatly distressed, as the highest-ranking individuals of the Empire had gathered around. The doctor was taken aback when he realized that Deon Hart was once again in need of medical attention. Amidst the banquet, news reached the doctor that Count Deon Hart required urgent care. Hastily, the doctor rushed over, only to find that Dion had vanished, leaving only high-ranking officials in his wake, which startled the doctor. The doctor attending to Dion was visibly anxious and trembling, catching Dion's attention. Dion wondered to himself why the doctor was trembling. The Crown Prince inquired the doctor if Dion had been poisoned. The doctor reassured him that there was nothing particularly wrong and that Dion's injury was minor. The Crown Prince grew furious, questioning how Dion could have vomited so much blood. He commanded the doctor to conduct a thorough examination, to which the doctor agreed. Suddenly, a voice from behind suggested that this incident was a manifestation of the Demon King's curse. General Nemesis, with his unmistakable tone, made the remark, further unsettling Dion. He couldn't comprehend why more people were converging in that location. The general stated that he had come to deliver the Emperor's message, as the ruler was prepared to receive Earl Hart. Dion felt the weight of Nemesis' disapproving gaze upon him, intensifying his unease. Finally, the young man's wish came true, and he was able to proceed to the ruler's office. Before leaving, he thanked the Crown Prince for his concern but informed him that it wasn't necessary to go through the trouble. Elpis regarded the Count with regret, sensing his reluctance to burden others, knowing that there was no way to break the curse of the Demon King. After defused himself, he found himself sitting in a carriage, deep in thought. The Duke contemplated the document he had witnessed earlier, the one the spy had attempted to steal. Despite the Emperor's assurances, it was undoubtedly a budget for the war. With that in mind, the Duke decided to proceed cautiously in order to achieve his goals. During their meeting, the ruler inquired about Dion's well-being, having already heard about the injury sustained during the spy's capture. Although the Count assured the Emperor that he was fine, his sweating caught the ruler's attention, prompting him to request that Dion not conceal his condition. The Emperor then urged Dion to take care of himself, recognizing him as one of the Empire's most valuable talents. Surprisingly, Hart actually felt fine, aside from needing to use the restroom before the meeting. Finally, the ruler questioned the reason behind Dion's sudden visit. As Dion attempted to mention the estate, the Emperor interrupted him, immediately dismissing any notion of returning the estate or similar matters. The Earl tried to decline the task of dealing with the Ghost Knight, but once again, the Emperor refused, calling the resignation request nonsense and instructing Dion not to bring up such matters again. Hearing this infuriated Hart, but he managed to maintain composure as the ruler expressed willingness to fulfill one of Dion's requests if the guest himself would run an errand. The Emperor handed Dion a document, which left the Count puzzled. It pertained to the Church of Redemption, and the ruler requested that Dion take care of it and its followers. However, the young man was already tired of such tasks and contemplated refusing the assignment, despite the potential fulfillment of his desire. Nevertheless, he felt compelled to inform her that he had made the same condition to Cruel Heart. Dion immediately regretted his agreement, realizing that he had fallen into a provocation. However, refusing was impossible, especially since the nature of his brother's desire remained unknown. It was imperative to stop him at any cost. Contrary to Dion's feelings, the emperor rejoiced because the request to destroy the church had actually originated from the Duke of Illuster. Although he was unaware of the Duke's motivations, the ruler could not let his plan succeed. He then turned to the Count and informed him that anyone who completed the task first would have their wish fulfilled. The promised reward was merely an excuse to ensure Dion could not refuse. Additionally, it would be preferable to reward the individual on the Emperor's side more generously, specifically Edward Desert. Dion rose from his seat, discreetly slipping the errand document into the inside pocket of his uniform. Given the unusual turn of events, he was confident that he would gain the upper hand over the detestable Cruel. While sitting in the study of his estate, Dion perused through the documents, feeling a sense of resentment. He reluctantly sipped the tea brought by the butler, remember, who noticed the gentleman's displeasure. The butler was surprised since it was the same drink that the crown prince had offered to Dion during his visit to the palace. However, despite the pleasant aroma, each sip triggered an urge for Dion to visit the restroom, reminding him of a recent incident. Remember also drew Dion's attention to the elixir placed next to the teapot on the tray. The butler explained that it was a medicine provided by the palace doctor, promising favorable effects on the body. He reassured Dion that there was no need to worry about poisoning, as the elixir had already been tested. Soon, Dame Lean entered the office and reported that the investigation had concluded. She shared that the Church of Atonement was a cult that primarily spread its influence in the slums. They attracted believers by offering free bread and water, unlike similar organizations that demanded allegiance or donations. However, the vague concept of redemption puzzled Dion, and he speculated that the distribution of food and water would likely be costly. The church had the support of several prominent nobles, but sponsoring such an organization would be financially burdensome for an average nobleman. The situation remained unclear, as the cult did not openly claim to be a religious leader. Feeling the effects of both the elixir and tea, Dion sensed that he was nearing his limit. He decided to prioritize a trip to the bathroom before attending to other matters. Impressed by his confident stance, Lean assumed that Dion himself had chosen to investigate, setting an example rather than merely giving orders to his subordinates. While she rejoiced, she also warned him about the dangerous nature of the venture. Determined to accompany her master, she declared her intention to join him. Dion was initially perplexed about the reasons for Lean's decision, but he soon realized the situation as they found themselves on the path leading to the main headquarters of the church. Lean suggested concealing Dion's identity, and the butler had prepared a tattered robe for that purpose. However, Dion panicked as he was unprepared for this turn of events. He hadn't even had the chance to use the bathroom due to Lean's overenthusiasm. Faced with the unexpected circumstances, Dion decided to leave before proceeding further. He assured Lean that he would return shortly and instructed her to remain vigilant. However, Lean refused to let her lord go alone and followed him. To her surprise, when she rounded the corner, Dion had already vanished. Concerned about his frail appearance and recalling all the symptoms she had observed, Lean arrived at a dreadful conclusion: the curse of the Demon King. Relieved to be walking down the alley, expressing gratitude to the hospitable hosts who had allowed him to wait until Lean left, Dion's relief was short-lived as he turned the corner and encountered Cruel standing before him. The mere fright caused Dion's weakened body to spurt blood, but he refused to show weakness in front of his detestable brother. Cruel reproached Dion for his inability to stay still with his wounded arm, particularly referring to the wound inflicted by the spy during the sortie against monsters. Cruel didn't bother concealing his frustration over the failed assassination attempt. At this moment, Dion was certain that his brother was behind the assassination plot. Filled with determination, Dion drew his dagger, intending to kill the scoundrel. However, the confrontation was interrupted by Lady Lean, who had arrived and called out to Cruel. Observing the bruises on her lord's face, her conviction about the curse grew stronger. The girl berated herself for allowing the earl to leave alone, despite his reluctance to burden her with his care. Eventually, she decided that she had to confront Cruel, who seemed familiar with her brother's companion. However, the Count commanded her to stand back, acknowledging that it would be satisfying if Cruel were to die. Despite being considered a hero of the Empire, Cruel was not favored by the leader of the Ghost Knights. He inquired about his younger brother's intentions, but Dion chose not to respond, believing that Cruel had no intention of engaging in combat. Dion decided it was best to cut off communication and ignored Hart's warning about the dangers of contacting the church. Dion thanked his brother for his concern, especially after hiring assassins. Cruel had always wondered how much longer Dion would endure his weak body and the curse of the Demon King. Stooping to the ground and smearing dirt on his clothes and face, contemplated putting an end to it all. Dion suggested Lady Lean do the same, but she hesitated, reluctant to dirty herself as a noblewoman. Dion then decided to deceive Lean and informed his companion, Ward, that he was certain she would never leave him alone, despite her current intention to do so. Overwhelmed by her emotions, the girl reluctantly followed Dion's advice and applied dirt to herself, as she could not break her word to her master. Dion watched with disgust as Lean layered dirt upon herself, regretting that the advice came from Cruel. Certain that his brother had come to the church for the same purpose, Dion couldn't allow him to accomplish the task first. He ordered Lean to hide the sword and wait for him, while he would enter the church first. Though she didn't want to let him go, the girl couldn't resist the order. Meanwhile, another girl emerged from the church. Dion, driven by the desire to surpass his brother, moved forward but slipped on the mud and fell a few dozen meters, landing in front of the church. Both girls were shocked by the incident, and Dion cursed and wished for death as he lay face down on the ground. In the meantime, Lady Lean observed from around the corner as her master was escorted into the church, delighted by Earl Hart's successful infiltration as a poor man. Determined to follow Dion, she made her decision. However, he refused to let her in, claiming that there were no available seats for the day. Nevertheless, they provided me with complimentary bread and water. However, the situation was likely different for Lean. Her strong aura, even beneath the dirt, betrayed her noble status, marking her as a spy. In contrast, the young man they had encountered earlier was visibly malnourished, with a possible arm injury, and the blood he spat indicated a difficult life in the slums. Dion was kindly offered a cup of hot tea to calm down, as he had mentioned hearing about the free food available at the church. The woman confirmed his suspicion and promised to bring everything promptly. When Dion inquired about the cost, the abbess assured him that there was no charge for anything and encouraged him to rest and enjoy his tea. Dion didn't perceive anything suspicious as he entered the Church of Atonement. It appeared to be a typical temple with benevolent priests and content but impoverished worshippers. The guards resembled holy knights, but the absence of anything remarkable raised the Count's suspicions. He realized that he was unlikely to be recognized due to his limited social involvement, but his red eyes made him stand out. To conceal his identity, he pulled his hood as far as possible. The abbess noticed this and asked if he was comfortable. Dion tried to explain that he was merely concerned about his appearance shocking others. However, the woman approached and removed his hood, assuring him that there was nothing to fear. Surprisingly, she was taken aback by Dion's bright red eyes. The girl made an attempt to touch Dion's face, and as their hands made contact, their eyes locked. The girl commented on his red eyes, causing Dion to contemplate what he should do, fearing that his true identity might be revealed. Just as the girl was about to ask something, Dion interjected, suggesting that she found his eyes repulsive. He shifted his gaze away, stating that he knew she wouldn't approve, as even his own family had abandoned him because of his eyes. However, the girl reassured him that she didn't find them disgusting. She mentioned Deon Hart, wondering if he had red eyes like him. Unbeknownst to her, the man standing before her was none other than Deon Hart himself. In his mind, Dion breathed a sigh of relief, realizing that his disguise had worked well. He asked the girl if she was referring to the hero of the Empire, and she confirmed it. She mentioned that there were negative rumors circulating about him, such as him being a vampire or an evil ghost. She wondered why such rumors were spreading but was certain that he was a terrible man. Hearing this, Dion felt disheartened, knowing the false rumors that were being spread about him. The girl believed that the frail man in front of her couldn't possibly be the renowned Deon Hart. She inquired if he knew anything about the place they were in. Dion mentioned that he had heard about the free food and water provided here without any obligations. The abbess chuckled, stating that such was the perception of the Church of Atonement by most people. She went on to explain that this religion was established to deliver the oppressed and suffering from the tyrannical rule of Eduardo. According to her, the reason the poor endured such agony was directly attributed to the emperor. If he had governed the lands peacefully, they would never have experienced such suffering. Even for Dion's fall, she blamed the ruler for neglecting to construct proper roads. Dion found this account intriguing, although he was hesitant to believe it, as he held the belief that none of the emperors before Eduardo had been able to alleviate the plight of the poor. The woman continued speaking, elucidating that they rejected the concept of money and instead focused on redemption. Dion became curious about who led this cult and could guide him to redemption and salvation. However, he was met with a rebuff, being told that he would discover for himself once he became a member of the church. Dion strolled down the corridor, deep in thought, reflecting on everything he had witnessed. Everything appeared suspicious, yet there was no concrete evidence to support his suspicions. The bread he had consumed seemed fine, leaving him to conclude that he would have to thoroughly investigate every nook and cranny to uncover the truth. Suddenly, a girl of approximately 12 years old approached him from behind, her face radiating joy despite her impoverished state. Introducing herself as CIA, she inquired if Dion was a new believer. Uncertainly, Dion nodded, and the girl, taking pity on his weary expression, assured him that he would be taken care of since everyone there provided free food and water without any expectations in return. Although her speech seemed peculiar to Dion, her eyes indicated that she had not been brainwashed. With a smile, Dion affectionately ruffled Chia's head, stating his genuine belief in redemption, which only widened her smile. Coming to the realization that things were not as straightforward as they initially appeared, Dion decided to venture into the secure rooms. However, before he could proceed, CIA was called away by a boy named Paul, reminding her that it was time for them to pray. Dion was even perplexed by the lingering gaze Paul directed at him, as if Chia's brother had some hidden meaning behind it. CIA bid farewell cheerfully and hurried off. Dion continued to contemplate how he could gain access to the protected rooms, but another thought nagged at him: what was Lady Lean doing outside all this time? Suddenly, a voice called out to Dion from behind, urging him to stop. Meanwhile, outside the church, the leader of the Ghost Knights pondered how to infiltrate the premises and assist her lord. She attempted to enter through the back gate, but her efforts proved futile. How could she face her count if she couldn't even successfully infiltrate the church? Noticing a pile of bread inexplicably lying on the ground, Lean unexpectedly heard a voice instructing her to summon the captain of the guard. Eager to eavesdrop on the conversation, she cautiously positioned herself around the corner. The abbess of the temple reported the presence of an intruder, emphasizing that if the intruder was not a hero, the captain would bear personal responsibility for the situation. Upon hearing this, Lean's fury ignited, assuming that her master had been captured. Without wasting time, she forcefully broke down the doors of the church, demanding to know the whereabouts of her lord from the terrified priests. Dion feared he would be apprehended if he was called out, but instead, one of the attendants handed him a bundle of bread and advised him to rest. He continued pacing back and forth, but fortunately managed to ascend through an open window. Soon, he found himself in a vast hall resembling a prayer room, although he couldn't pinpoint its precise location aside from the ghastly purple curtains. Once again, nothing remarkable stood out in the room. Suddenly, the door at the rear swung open, and the priests and Mother Superior entered.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button for more content. Feel free to leave a comment down below sharing your thoughts or suggestions. If you want to stay updated on all our latest uploads, click the notification bell icon. And hey, why not check out some of our other videos popping up on the screen right now? If you'd like to support the channel, you can do so by liking, sharing, and subscribing. It really means a lot. Peace.